do. So,
and we are live.
We are live.
What up?
What
Cheers.
up? Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, so we got Chris Christie's fat ass. We got your governor, Ron DeSantis, Mr. Parker from Jacksonville. How are things in Jacksonville, by the way, man?
They're all right, man. We got a new Democrat mayor.
Oh, I bet things are just wonderful then.
Oh, you know it. Nothing's changed. Our Republicans vote like Democrats anyway. So
yeah, I bet so, man. So what do Floridians think about DeSantis in his presidential run?
I don't know. My opinion is like I felt like he was the reason why I became a libertarian is because I was a Republican and he shut down bars and breweries and I was working at one.
Yeah.
So, but after that, he gets credit for attempting to open up sooner than other states. And I feel like he did okay whenever that happened. But technically, like, North Dakota never closed. Georgia opened before Florida.
Right.
And, I don't like Kemp either. You know what I mean? Shout out to Shane Hazel. But I think people liked how he handled COVID, reopened schools before everybody else, that sort of thing. But in my opinion, he went too much on like the culture war. Like, don't get me wrong, not that those conversations need to be having, but we don't need more authoritarianism from in the executive position. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think so. I mean, it's a way to kind of get a base going, riled up. But I feel like it's kind of like a lighter fluid on like a fire. It flames up, but it doesn't like sustain anything,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then, so we got Nikki Haley. She's back, man. She might have a good night. I don't know about that.
I think that's the one to watch.
She had dude. She surprised me in the first debate, honestly. How well she did. I didn't think that she would capture so many of the centrist opinions like she did. She did really good, dude. We got Mike Pence's fuck ass on this thing.
No fly is gonna win the debate.
And then we got Ramaswamy. I'm sure he's gonna dominate.
Yeah,
I would vote for a vegan. I'm 100% anti-Vivek.
Just because he doesn't eat
He's
meat.
a vegan. Fuck that. No, dude.
Can't trust a fucking vegan, right?
I tell you one thing. One of the reasons, and this is no bullshit, why I didn't like Trump is he likes his steaks well done with ketchup.
With ketchup,
ruined. Yeah,
that was.
I'm done. That's a deal breaker.
Yeah,
we knew he wanted to take our guns as soon as he did that.
Man, we should have known. Yeah, you should.
You should have known. Any red-blooded American that doesn't like their steak red, they're just suspect. You have to automatically question everything that they may do, including breathing.
They got the candidates walking in here. There's old Nikki. Look at old Chris Christie. This guy here, man.
Who's that old guy?
Burgum. He's like from North Dakota. I actually like that dude.
Is it Wyoming? Because
I think he's North Dakota, man. He's in North Dakota, dude.
So
I'm sure. I mean, like,
the
Dakotas kind of come together. You know what I'm saying?
How are they placing him on the stage?
He's the North. He's the governor of North Dakota.
Is it by like?
I just want to say they all look alike.
Yeah, they do. So Eric, typically what happens in these is that you will they're going to have, before the debate begins, they have members of either themselves or members of their team will come and draw lots, and those lots will be for podium choice, who gets first question, who gets the last question, that kind of thing, and then like who gets the responses. And so it's really just kind of luck of the draw typically. And there's always like different opinions of where you should sit. Like some people think like you should get the middle seat is the best one. Some people think you should be on the end. And so I went with the middle in my debate. I pulled first pick and I was like, I'm in the fucking middle. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
That was very masterful of you as well.
That was my day, man. Hey, let's get some audio here. What is Larry Kudlow saying?
Right.
Let it go. But I think the candidate that can voters anxieties and issues dear to their hearts, that's the candidate that the voter walks away remembering. Whether it's issues directly or whether it's an anxiety or just cleverness or, like you just said, common sense. I think people are desperate for common sense policies. I just think you're right, man. I mean, I hope it's message driven. If it's attack driven, I just don't think they'll have done their job tonight.
I'm going to agree with Larry Kudlow on that one, man.
Yeah.
I wonder what the viewership of this debate is going to be too, considering the time and that it's on Fox Business. Like I'm wondering,
it's late for the East Coast. Our friend Eric, just past 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah,
oh yeah,
but Eric's a gangster though, man. He can handle it.
I'm a Florida man.
That's right, dude. Florida man.
Wow.
So I can't hear him.
Yeah, put him back on.
All right, folks, bring back Red Bear.
Well, they're just jibber jabbering. I can still hear it.
And Carl Rowe.
Gotcha.
Carl
we could tell.
Rowe.
We were just sitting there listening, like we knew what was going on.
Yeah, I was listening. You guys were just having awkward silence.
Ideas and worries and anxieties that voters have. All of us voters. It isn't just Republicans and Democrats. Everybody shares a lot of anxieties right now.
I did think Vivek
country.
Or
That's why I'm pushing the message side of this.
Stole the show. Is that how it says Vivek?
I think it's really
Stole the show last time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Even though a few of his answers and stuff he said lately, you could tell he's pandering to the crowd, like the liberty leaners in the Republican Party, if those still even exist. You know what I mean? Like,
Have you called him his podcast? Like he was on he was on Dave Smith and like a couple other. And did you catch him on Liberty Lockdown with Clint?
Mm-mm.
He claimed in that podcast that he's a libertarian and that like that's what he claims at least. I mean, it's easy to say. I feel like kind of my suspicion's a lot like Marcus is sometimes I feel like he's just whatever he needs to be for the person in front of him.
Yeah. He's reading the room. He's a chameleon.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of things about him I find troubling.
Yeah, you need to do that if you're going to be a good candidate. So, I mean, like, that's the difference, though, is we wouldn't compromise on our principles. We don't know his principles. The fact that no one in libertarian circles ever heard of him before this, you know what I mean? Or, like maybe he wrote before he wrote Woke Inc., no one heard of him.
He made a couple good points, though.
Before filing. So
he made some good points in Liberty Lockdown that I was. I went into it with a certain opinion, and the way he kind of expressed them, I was like, okay, I can kind of pick up what he's putting down. I don't think that any of these people on the stage have a snowball's chance in hell of being the nominee. So this is. I mean, this is a debate for who's going to be VP. Basically, is what this is.
Second place. One thing about Vivek, though, after his debate performance, several polls had him his annoying. Well, I don't know how you say that, but people find him annoying.
Really?
And the percentage of people that found him annoying actually went up because I think he tries to talk so fast and just like bombard you with so many points in a single soundbite. It just seems condescending whenever he talks to somebody, and that's just one of the things I don't like about him. The thing when he said there should be tests or task for people to be able to vote in the United States, that really bothers me.
I mean, and it does. Like anybody that I've talked to, any black person I've talked to, Marcus. I mean, that just, dude, it just kind of rubs you wrong, doesn't it? Like in the black community, you're like, hey, dude, like because you still know people alive today, probably grandmothers or something that weren't allowed to vote. Right. Or I had trouble voting. And so you throw that back out. You're like, dude, what the hell, man? Like, not a good look.
And that was my reaction. I was like, hey, bro, we already tried this before. And that's the thing. I don't think he's had a grand American experience because he's a first generation. He's 38 years old. As far as civil rights, he came in the game in the fourth quarter, and it's 72-0 already. So I don't think Vivek truly understands the overall American experience yet.
I was just gonna say, like, I have also, to play devil's advocate, I think it should be harder to vote than it is to get a firearm. You know what I mean? Because almost everyone deserves a right to self-defense, but whenever you let stupid people vote, they infringe on your life more than or just as much as someone attacking you. You know what I mean?
And again, that's now you know what the role of public education.
But I get what you're saying. I'm not trying to take away people's right to vote, but that was just a thought I had on the ride home from work today. Like, man, we let stupid people vote, and that's what's happening to this country.
Well, that's always kind of been the argument, it's no taxation without representation, right? And then now you have people deciding taxation that don't own anything or don't work. I mean, that's kind of been the argument sometimes too, but we just got to make smarter people.
Let me ask both of you, what percentage of Americans would be eligible to vote? I have a rough number in my head. I just want to see if we're in the same ballpark.
5 to 10, maybe?
10% of Americans?
If you pass that civics test, that's the crazy thing is I think, and maybe I'm just a fanboy of ourselves as libertarians, but I think we might know the Constitution and separation of powers and, the government a little bit better than the average voter. You know what I mean?
There isn't a lot. Like if you just had civics and basic economics starting in like 5th grade, that wouldn't be solved. Like you would have people like, wait a second, you mean there is a thing called supply and demand? You can't just invent money out of nowhere. So greetings to you, Michael, Marcus, and Eric. Hey, Lucid Libertarian, thank you for your comment and joining us tonight for the RNC 2.0, the debate to see who's going to be VP.
I like my guy.
Thanks, Kenneth. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, he was a candidate in Oklahoma. This libertarian candidate.
Yeah, strong candidate too. Really strong candidate. Yeah, Vivek wants 18 to 25-year-olds to pass the civics test or do 6 months in military or first responder type service.
Yeah,
Marcus, let me ask you a question, man.
Yeah.
So, like, you got 2 kids of college age, right?
Right.
I have one that's college age. Like in Israel, every kid 18, if they have a disability or something, does a year in the armed service.
Yeah.
And that's
same thing with South Korea. It's 2 years.
Yeah. So it kind of gives them this idea of like this, that they have this national identity. They're part of this thing. What do you think about that, man? If that was a requirement, do you think that like the average 18-year-old today, like, what do you think, man?
Oh, hell no. I don't think that's truly compatible with the Republic. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because it's all about the individual. And if we weren't involving ourselves in foreign occupations and foreign wars we wouldn't need to stay on a footing like a South Korea, which is technically still at war with North Korea, or Israel that's surrounded by its quote unquote enemies.
There's the guy that banned machine guns.
So I just can't see that. And with the current government we have, they already make us subservient to them enough right now. We don't need to be their property out of a mandatory way.
Let's go ahead and cut that audio in. They're giving the kind of the pre-bites of these people. I want to see how they're.
I don't like him. I don't like her.
You don't like Tim Scott?
No, I don't like Tim Scott at all.
America's role in the world? We need to build a military fitted to the
I don't like him.
challenges
Yeah, fuck him.
in an ever more dangerous world.
Really?
To avoid war
Hate him.
Top of the HUD.
are showing tough, and the country faces even more challenges. Would Reagan even recognize the country in which we now live?
Wow,
Tonight,
that was a
candidates
powerful
seeking
point.
The Republican nomination converge in California to chart a new path for the grand old party. Now, is
Okay,
the time
so
for
if you had to, which one of them would you have a beverage with?
Vivek.
I think I'm gonna I'll have one with the guy from North Dakota. He's probably the most like laid back and chill, probably. I think Vivek would make me like drink more. Like, just stop talking.
Yeah, you wouldn't get a word in.
Okay, so we're at the Reagan Library. Okay, good deal.
Yeah, in our neck of the woods. Look how beautiful it is in California. Everybody's jealous.
Where the stage is set for a showdown.
Y'all got great weather, that's for sure. Politics.
Oh yeah,
suck.
that's all.
Yeah,
Marcus,
that's
can we
it.
get
That's
can we
all
get the
y'all got.
audio on this feed a little higher and maybe bring us down for the debate?
Does Fox News Channel
I don't know.
Carino
Let's
and
see.
Ilya Calderon, Univision.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
I
Thank
can
you,
hear you.
Stuart. President Reagan famously described America as a shining city on a hill. And tonight, 7 candidates will make the case they should be the one to lead that city into a brighter tomorrow. But first, they have to convince you, the voter. Please allow me to welcome our Spanish-speaking audience. Muy buenas noches a todos. Desde la Biblioteca Presidencial Ronald Reagan, los precandidatos republicanos también buscan su
I love the way
voto para las
Univision
primarias del
sounds.
partido.
You know?
Bienvenidos.
And looks, it ain't hard to look at either.
Good
You know?
evening.
it's always
So,
sexy.
let's
Yeah.
meet the candidates who have qualified and chosen to be on this stage tonight. They are positioned by the order they rank in the polls, with the
Okay.
highest polling candidate in the middle. Standing
There- so
center
there you go,
stage for
Eric.
the
They gave it
governor,
to the middle.
Ron
There you go.
DeSantis.
And then
Yeah, Eric leading the pack.
And that's what I thought they did last time.
There's Vivek right next to him. Okay.
I wish you would do something with his hairline too.
Then Nikki Haley.
Everyone's wearing red so far.
Then
2 red
Mike
ties.
Pence.
Is that a
Oh, no,
homage to
Tim
Megan?
Scott.
Tim Scott.
They may have given him a dress code or a color code, maybe.
Governor Chris
And of course,
Christie.
Dang,
Chris
Where's
Christie
that
fucked
grape
it up.
jelly?
Former Vice President Mike Pence.
I can't
Thanks,
see him without
Doug.
a fly on his head.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Bring the fly back. That's the only thing
Minnesota
that's good. Yeah.
Governor Doug Burgum.
All right, Doug.
Doug.
Are we rooting for Doug?
Doug's kind
I,
of a
don't,
sleeper
I think
candidate.
I'm going for Doug. I'm just
He's
gonna
got
throw that out
good
there
points.
right
All right, let's hear.
1 minute to
What do we got?
answer,
Did our
and
beat mess
30
up?
seconds to respond
we
is
go.
singled out. When their time
1:30.
runs out, we'll all hear this. We have a lot of ground to cover, so please keep it civilized.
Let's get going. We are in this spacious, sunny place tonight, designed to reflect the very nature and character of Ronald Reagan. It's a place that makes you proud to be an American. Yet today our nation is drowning in division and incivility.
And debt.
Voters say they dread the 2024 election and find politics exhausting. 2 in 3 Americans think the country is on the wrong track. And 3 in 4 say the economy is not in good shape.
I want to meet that
Prices
1 in
are
3.
up 18% since 2020. More than half of the US population has little access to childcare. 85% of Americans say their personal finances are a source of stress.
Americans want to believe a leader who says, "You can follow me. I've got you. Don't worry." President Biden is trying to do that with Bidenomics.
And yesterday, he joined
the
the
hell is
picket
this?
lines where auto workers are demanding
He's at the
more
UAW.
wages and job security. Senator Scott,
I'm just
you
glad
recently
he slowed
reacted
down his pace so
by
he doesn't fall
praising
as much
Ronald
as he
Reagan
used
for
Yeah.
firing air traffic controllers in the 1980s, saying, "You strike, you're fired." Would you fire thousands of striking auto workers today, Senator?
Obviously, the President of the United States cannot fire anybody in the private sector. However, we should look back at the first bill in Congress under Joe Biden. The first bill had $86 billion for the union pensions because they continue to overpromise yet underdeliver.
Right.
One of the challenges that we have in the current negotiations is that they want 4-day French work weeks, but more money. They want more benefits, working fewer hours. That is simply not going
Sounds-
to stand.
everybody wants
I
that.
sat in a finance committee hearing when a widow came before the committee who was promised pensions from the unions, $4,000 a month. Unfortunately, it had been cut to $1,000 a month. We must make sure that we honor the commitments that we make. And one of the ways that we do that, do not overpromise and then underdeliver and leave the taxpayers on the hook. I'll say this, Joe Biden should not be on the picket line. He should be on the southern border working to close our southern border because
meat
it
in
is
there.
unsafe.
That's an AB tactic, right? See,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go from A to B. Yeah.
Deaths of 70,000 Americans in the last 12 months because of fentanyl. It is devastating. Every county in America is now a border county because fentanyl has devastated Americans in every single state. I will also say 6 million illegal crossings since Joe Biden has taken office. And he eliminated Title 42. The one thing he should do is finish the wall, reinstate Title 42, and get the job done.
Okay, so he's gonna set the tone early on the border. Okay.
Oh, he already got the
Questions on
border
border
thing
and
right
there.
immigration.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we do want to
That was a
talk about the
long
economy
rant.
and jobs.
So now
And
the
especially
other
want to
people
talk
up here are
about
going to have to decide if they're going to chase that and try to be part of that, or they're going to set
You
themselves
really
apart with something
empathize
else.
With the strikers, you're standing next to Senator
I think
Scott. Do you
Vivek's gonna try to
agree
do
with
all
what
of
he
it.
said,
Let's
or do you
see.
think he's wrong?
I agree with some of what he said, for sure. I like the spirit of it. I'll say that I don't have a lot of patience for the union bosses. I think that's where he and I actually have a common view. I do have a lot of sympathy for the workers, however. People are going through real hardship in this country. I've been through hardship growing up. My father stared down layoffs at GE under Jack Welch's tenure at the GE
I
plant
like
in
Jack
Bloomingdale,
Welch, though.
Ohio. My mom had to work overtime in nursing homes in Southwest Ohio to make ends meet and pay off our home loan. So I
They
understand
both
that
have
hardship
very
is not
advanced
choice.
degrees, both of his parents.
but victimhood is a choice, and we choose to be victorious in the United States of America. You know what? If I was giving advice to those workers, I would say go picket in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. That's really where the protest needs to be. Disastrous economic policies that have driven up prices, that have driven up interest rates and mortgage rates. At the same time, wages remaining stagnant. What we need is to deliver economic growth in this country. Unlock American energy. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy, put people back to work by no longer paying them more money to stay at home, stabilize the US dollar itself, and rescind a majority of those unconstitutional federal regulations that are hampering our economy. That is how we unleash American exceptionalism. And that's not a Democratic vision or a Republican vision. That is an American vision that we embrace economic growth, and capitalism is still the best system known to man to lift us up from poverty, and we should not apologize for it. That's what it means to be an American.
He umbrellaed it, man. See, like, of course, no one's going to call out the Federal Reserve's role in this, obviously.
General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis make
I still think his hair makes me think of a Batman villain.
Hair?
Vivek's hair, just
I think we're getting a follow-up UAW question here.
1% now controls 1/5 of all income. Vice President Pence, last week you said you side with American workers, but you also support how these companies operate. Which is it?
Well, thank you for the question. I want to thank Univision and Fox Business for assembling such a wonderful forum. Look, I do disagree with something Tim Scott just said. Joe Biden doesn't belong on a picket line. He belongs on the unemployment line.
His staff gave him that one.
Leading manufacturing state in the country per capita. I was governor of the state of Indiana.
He just shot his load.
12,000 factories back to America during our administration. I know something about manufacturing. And I got to tell you, while the union bosses are talking about class warfare and talking about disparity in wages, I have to tell you, I really believe what's driving that is Bidenomics has failed. Wages are not keeping up with inflation. Auto workers and all American workers are feeling it, and families are struggling in this economy. And Joe Biden's Green New Deal agenda is good for Beijing and bad for Detroit. We ought to repeal the Green New Deal, get rid of the mandates and subsidies that are driving American gasoline, automotive manufacturing into the graveyard. And beyond that, also, as President of the United States, I'll be standing with workers all across America, and I'll be standing for the right to a union or not join a union as they decide.
So far, nobody has ridden coattails, right? We have three distinct openers.
Joe Biden needs to be fired. That's why I'm running for president. I look forward to being the next president of the United States.
How Tim Scott get to jump in? Did he call him out?
He has 30 seconds for rebuttal.
What she's done for me. It's why we're focusing on restoring hope, creating opportunities, and protecting the America we all love. Growing up in a single-parent household, I wondered if the American dream would work for a kid in the inner city. I've got good news for every single child, whether you're in the inner cities of Chicago or the rural parts of Iowa. America and the dream, it is alive, it is well.
That was a pander to Iowa, bro.
That's why I don't like it.
United States.
But that was good tactically. That was a good rebuttal. Yeah.
How does the government restore hope?
I think we need to look at exactly what happened. Biden showed up on that picket line, but why are those workers actually there? It's because of all of the spending that he has pushed through in the economy that's raised the inflation. So when you look at the fact that we are paying higher gas prices, higher grocery
Republicans
prices,
spent more. Republicans spent more.
$7,000 more a year for families. What we need to do is I came out with an economic plan, eliminate the gas and diesel tax so that they have more money in their pocket. Let's focus on going
No, I think it was a hiatus for 6 months.
Cutting taxes for middle America and collapsing those brackets.
And cut spending.
Get rid of unfair distortions like the state and local tax that they give to wealthy people in blue states and paid by red states. And let's make sure we make the small business taxes permanent. They only made those temporary. They made the corporate tax is permanent. Let's
Imagine if
focus on
somebody
what it
was
takes
up
to
here
put
pushing
more
the fair
cash
tax
in the
right now.
pockets of
How
workers.
good they would look.
That's when we'll be able
They
to
can
deal
have, they can have an
with
answer to
strikes
every
like this,
single
not
one of the
sitting
four
on a picket
things
line
somebody has
like
talked
Joe
about.
Biden is.
Thank you, Governor Haley. We have other questions to get to about economy.
Have Republicans ever cut taxes and cut spending?
I don't think at the same time. No.
No, they've never done that. I'm sick of that.
Okay,
point.
here's Bergam.
The
Hold on.
reason why people are striking in Detroit
My
is
guy.
because Joe Biden's interference
Oh,
with
man.
capital markets and with free markets. The subsidies, we're subsidizing
markets.
the automakers and we're subsidizing the cars and a particular kind of car, not every car. We're
Yeah.
particularly
Yeah.
we're subsidizing
Yes.
electric vehicles.
Told you this guy's
And
good.
decide that we're going to take all of your taxpayer monies, take $1 billion, subsidize a certain type of vehicle, and the batteries come from China. China controls 85% of the rare earth minerals. They're called rare earth because they're measured in parts per million. China is moving 100,000 pounds of earth in Indonesia, in Africa. They're literally destroying the planet so that they can make a battery that's in a car subsidized here. That's why they're striking, because they need 2/3 less workers to build an electric car. Joe Biden, this strike is at Joe Biden's feet.
Good point. Good point.
Doug, I'm telling you, Doug is the man.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. He's a sleeper, man.
I've
like
never heard of him until
He's
today.
like a 2007 Camry with like an LS under the hood or something. You know?
Does not reach
Yeah.
a deal by the end of this week. Vice President Pence warns
I'm
that
glad they added
politics
her.
of, quote, Trump's populist proteges,
Yeah,
like
not
Mr.
bad, huh?
Ramaswamy, are a road to
Just
ruin
close your eyes.
for the GOP. If the government shuts down,
Oh my God! Look
should
at Chris
voters
Christie. What the
blame
hell is this dude doing? Look,
Republicans?
look. He looks like he's staring at a Subway sandwich or something.
in Washington, D.C.
I thought he was having a
down there
diabetic
and do the
attack.
job, and they've
Yeah.
been failing at
I
doing
thought he
the
was
job
looking at a plate
for a
of
very
cookies.
long time. And let's be honest about this with the voters. You know, during the Trump administration, they added $7 trillion, $7 trillion in national debt. And now the
Hey,
Biden
it's
administration
true.
they put another $5
Hey,
trillion.
I'm going to move my
and
camera
counting.
down to my
They have
laptop.
failed, and they're in the
Go ahead.
spot
Let me know
right
if
now
it messes
because
up
none
audio
of them
or
are willing to
anything.
tell
All right.
the truth. None of them are willing to take on the difficult issues. They just want to keep kicking the can down the road. And the inflation that Nikki spoke about is absolutely right, and it's caused by government spending. And that's why people all across this country are suffering tonight. And yet we don't get any answers because Joe Biden
How's that
hides
sound?
in his basement.
It's good.
And won't answer as to why he's raising the debt the way he's done. And Donald Trump hides behind the walls of his golf clubs and won't show up here to answer questions like all the rest of us are up here to answer. He put $7 trillion on the debt. He should be in this room to answer those questions for the people you
point.
talk about who are suffering. And
Yeah,
if the
Jabba is
government-
mad.
and if the government closes, it's the blame. It is to the blame of everyone in Washington, D.C., who has failed to do their job and just plays to the grandstand.
Mike, you see what that is? He would run-
He surprised me with that.
Yeah.
one. He surprised me with that
Pretty
one.
good.
But
He
we
had
know
one
he
good
would
moment in the
run
last
up the
debate. And he just,
spending.
huh?
He would run up the spending just like has already happened. You know, he
doesn't
wouldn't do any
change.
different.
in Washington
He's a
are
big
shutting
government
down the
Republican.
American
Oh, here's your
dream
guy.
with their reckless behavior.
Hey, my guy.
They borrowed, they printed, they spent, and now you're paying more for everything. They are the reason for that. They have
Not
shut
true.
down our national sovereignty by allowing our border to be wide open. So please spare me the crocodile tears for these people. They need to change what's going on. And where's Joe Biden? He's completely missing in action from leadership. And you know who else is missing in action? Donald Trump is missing in action. He should be on this stage tonight.
Two
He
shots
owes it
fired.
to you
Yeah.
to defend his record, where they added $7.8 trillion to the
He was
debt.
ready for that
Set
$7
the
trillion,
stage
too.
for the inflation that we have now. I can tell you this: as governor of Florida, we cut taxes, we ran surpluses, we've paid down over 25% of our state debt, and I vetoed wasteful spending when it came to my desk. And as your president, when they send me a bloating spending bill that's going to cause your prices to go up, I'm going to take out this veto pen and I'm going to send it right back to them.
You're not supposed to have props.
I got a response to the sentence at the break.
All right.
A question that is on the minds of a lot of moms and dads and Americans, and I know that you've been thinking about it
I don't
because
like her. She's annoying.
child care costs, they are up. They're topping $10,000 per month. Some families are
Ten-
spending
what?
up to half of their income on
$10,000 a
childcare.
month. What kind of
And they're having to
childcare is that?
decide, Is it worth it for me
That
to work?
elite
or
preschool
does it
shit
not make
you
sense
get
for
in
me
New
financially?
York.
In 3
That's that
days,
good stuff.
billions of dollars in pandemic-era funding.
And we
is
had that.
going
We had the
to
99-cent child
and
care where I came from.
70,000
You know?
daycares
2
could
for 1 child
close.
care.
So you had an effort to broaden eligibility for child care
It was
assistance. That
$1,200
fell
a week
apart
if I
last
was to
year.
do that here.
And
When
for
my
the
kids were
moms
young.
and dads out there who are worried, what can you tell them if you weren't able to get it through the Congress?
No, 600.
How could you do it as president?
Certainly one of the things I did as a member of Congress was to make sure that we protected the Head Start programs around the country, giving people the opportunity to pick and choose the place that they send their children. The challenges that we see today—
This is going to be a non-answer. This is going to be a non-answer.
Is that the cost for daycare has gone over $15,000.
He's going to regurgitate the problem and not really give a solution.
Unless he makes the Department of Education bigger, he can't do what he wants to do.
Now, if you go to mwforliberty.com/issues, you'll find a way that employers can pay for child care and not without any government bureaucracy. I actually got a child care plan.
We actually lowered a single mother's taxes by 70% on the federal level. For dual income households by 60%.
Did that really happen?
We went a step further. We doubled the child tax credit and made it refundable. By doing that,
I don't know. I don't have enough to fact check him in real time, but somebody's going to.
Lower somebody's tax rate by 70%. The American people keep their money. When
that would
happens,
lift them out of poverty.
The greatest opportunities rise from the ashes.
Okay, I'm going to give you 15 seconds. Go ahead. And then we're going to the border.
Ilya mischaracterized a part of my view. I think this artificial division is unhelpful in our party. The real divide is not between the Republicans on this stage. And in the Reagan Library, I want to say these are good people on this stage.
Oh, yeah.
The real divide is between the majority of us in this country who love the United States of America and share our founding ideals. Free speech, meritocracy, the idea you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character, and the fringe minority in the Democrat Party that has a chokehold over that party. That's the real divide. So this populist versus classical debate is artificial. We need to unite this party.
This is turning into the Muppet Show.
She's going to tell him.
Yep. We have all these questions. We're going to get to you. We're going to come back to you. There's a lot of time.
That's Burgum.
Nobody answered the question. In North Dakota, we
Yeah.
knew that the
you
cliff
were
was
right.
coming.
Yeah.
We knew that there was going to be millions of people without it. And so guess what? We planned.
Okay.
When we passed legislation because
Sir, we will
childcare
get you some questions, but you're going to have to let us move on. We are going to the border next.
I like that he tried to steal
Yeah.
that.
Hey, do your shit, Doug. Don't let
He was too polite. He was raising his hand when Vivek was trying to jump in.
The following.
The idea of amnesty for those who have put down roots and who have lived here, even though sometime back they may have entered illegally.
2 years later, President Reagan granted amnesty to nearly 3 million immigrants, something
Oh,
no
this is
Democrat
about to be a
or
separation.
Republican president
Right
has
here.
done
Yeah, this
since
is about to separate.
Governor Christie. As governor of a
And
non-border
look,
state in
there.
2010,
If any of these
Governor
candidates do not understand the Latin American audience watching this broadcast right now, they're fucking retarded. Like, yeah.
saying immigrants should
This
be
is a deciding question
like
for a lot of
FedEx
people.
packages.
Hope someone brings up the
Stand
Iran
now on the
Contra.
path to citizenship
Yeah.
for
I got my Mena, Arkansas shirt on. So
Yeah, there you
yeah,
go.
very
Since
sealed.
No one has done anything since we first had this discussion 13 years ago. We're not in a position to be able to do any of that anymore. What we have to do now is first treat this like the law enforcement problem it is. Our laws are being broken every day at the southern border, every day.
So
And Joe
we'll
Biden
talk
and
about
his
this at
crew
break,
is
but
doing nothing about enforcing that law. They are letting it go. And by the way, they announced during the presidential race they were going to let it go. And we need to have a president who acts like I did as governor, enforce the law first and foremost. And that means what I'll do on day one is sign an executive order to send the National Guard to partner with Customs and Border Patrol to make sure that we stop the flow of fentanyl over the border, but also to make sure that we send a much different message. We want you here in this country to fill the 6 million vacant jobs we have, but only if you come here to follow the law and only if you come here legally. If you come here illegally, we will apprehend you and we will send you back across the border from which you came. And the fact is that until we set a law and order agenda
Daniel, I
in this
like that.
country,
Yes,
not only now, but in the future, we won't.
we would be
won't
good.
able to
Just
continue
have that
this.
building
And
vacant.
I'll tell you this.
Yeah, I got a
Pleasure.
response to him
Failed
on that
this
too.
as well. He said he was going
Kenneth
to
Evans
build
says it was so
a wall
bad the
across
last
whole
time the
border.
government shut down
He'd
that
go
every
52
time
miles
it's
of wall,
mentioned on the
said
news,
Mexico
they
would
have
pay
to
for it.
remind you
Guess what?
when it
I think
was because
Mexico
no
knew
one
that
remembers
he's
any
only gonna build
hardship
52
when
miles.
that
They might have
happened,
paid for the
unlike when the
52 miles.
government shut down the economy.
Governor.
Exactly.
Governor Haley. Most illegal immigrants are coming from countries south of the border.
Yeah, scientific, I know, right?
The steady stream of
Saying border
people
wall really gets
coming
their
into the
ducks
country on a
hard.
daily
Yeah.
basis. In fact, we believe we have a live picture of it tonight
Yeah.
that is happening right now live. In the last decade,
Oh
the
my
U.S.
God,
has
Fox,
spent nearly
really?
$55 billion to
Wait, we got like
address
10
the
people
root
getting on a
causes
bus
of
here.
migration. But crime, poverty, and
I'm
corruption
kind of
they
pissed. They're
persist,
dropping them
and the
off out
number
here
of
now.
migrants
That's supposed to
is
be
only
a red
growing.
state problem,
Are
not
we
where I live.
wasting our money?
Keep your border walls to
Well, what
yourself.
happens is when Joe
You're a
Biden waved the
sanctuary
green
state,
flag,
right?
It told everybody to come, and
Dude,
now
I-
we've seen 6
bring us,
million
man.
people
I
cross the
I
border.
love them.
We've
Bring
had
me
more
everybody,
criminals
man.
When they
that
say
killed
we're a
Americans in the
sanctuary state,
Iraq,
I thought they were
Vietnam, or
talking about the
Afghanistan
gospel.
wars
We're
combined.
going to
We need
the
to make sure that we are a
sanctuary.
country
I mean,
of
like-
laws.
Hold on, let's. I want to hear
Stop
Nikki
being a
Haley on
country
this
of
one.
laws. We give up everything this country was founded on. So we have to secure the border. The way we do that is, first of all, defund sanctuary cities. You see what's
Wait.
happening in Philadelphia
wait
right
a
now.
second.
It's got to stop.
Okay, hold
We
on a
need to
second.
make sure we put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. I spent 400 miles.
But the problem is
down
right
that
now,
border,
Nikki, is that
and
they
I'm
currently
telling
are
you,
operating
Border
under an
Patrol
August 3rd,
agents aren't allowed to
2023
do their
rule that
job.
allows anybody to
Let's
claim
go
asylum.
back to
Is anybody going to bring up what's
Mexico
really
policy.
happening here?
Instead of catch and release, let's go to catch and deport.
What about
and
the
let's
aid
make
that we've been? What about the aid that federal taxpayers are paying to deal with the root causes? It's not working.
What
The
root
only
causes?
You see, if
thing
somebody
that
would
road
take the
we're
doctrine?
libertarian line of
spending
build
right
walls
now
around
is to
welfare, you
secure
might
the
actually
border,
get
the
some
southern border,
buy-in
the
from both
northern
sides.
border, period.
You would cut
We
off
need
aid
to
to the
keep
region?
Americans safe, and right now Americans are not safe. Only when we fix the immigration system, only when we get the border secure, should we ever look at putting
I
any
bet you
more
if you
money
quizzed
into
any
this.
single one of these
Our
people
money
up
should
there
be about
on what the
keeping Americans
process
safe.
was
We're
to
not
immigrate to
doing
this
that. Joe
country,
Biden's
none of them
not
could
doing
outline
that.
it for
And
you.
you mentioned
Maybe
Congress
Vivek,
and
because his
shutting
parents
down
did
government.
it.
He chat,
Oh,
yeah,
we
Vivek
have
might,
to
yeah.
change
But his,
the
but again, his
law.
parents were on like
In
K1s, weren't they
4
originally?
years,
Yeah,
I mean,
they both
40
had very
years,
advanced degrees.
Congress
They were
has
the
only
ones you
delivered
want.
a budget on time 4 times in 40 years. If they don't keep the government open, they should not get paid. No pay.
I agree with
budget.
that one,
That's
Nikki,
the way
yeah.
we should go.
Governor DeSantis, we have a question for you. Governor DeSantis, China invested $12 billion in Latin America just last year. They signed a
You know, if
strategic
Trump's watching this right now, he
partnerships
got
with
so
7
happy.
countries,
He got so
including
stoked
Mexico.
at that word.
And
Yeah.
China's
I had
military
China in
ties
check.
to the region now include arms sales and training exercises. Are you comfortable with China deepening ties with our southern neighbors?
Of course not. And the reason why we're in this mess is because elites in DC for far too long have chosen surrender over strength when it comes to the CCP. Some people in our country got rich, our industrial base got hollowed out, and they have been able to build the second most powerful military in the entire world. We need a totally new approach to China. We are going to have real hard power in the Indo-Pacific, like Reagan, to deter their ambitions. We're going to have economic independence.
So our trade deficit
from
is really
China,
important to
where
the
we're
central
decoupling
bankers,
our
right? Like
economy, and we
these people are going to
go
work for
after the
them. They're not going to let you
cultural
have like
power
a
they have in this
balanced
country. As
parity with
governor of
China. That's not
Florida,
going to happen.
I
Like
banned
call it
the
out.
CCP from buying land.
We're
in our
their
state. We
biggest
should do that
customer.
all across
Exactly.
these United States. We shouldn't
I
have
like
them in
when
our
he said,
universities.
hard
we shouldn't
power.
have Confucius Institutes.
Hard. That meant real
You
hard.
see a country in decline. Our power's in decline.
That's meant-
China's going to surpass us this decade, and if they do that, that's going to affect every single American household. As your president, I am not going to let that happen. I'm
There's
gonna
no way
reverse
we
this
ever go to
country's
war with
decline. We
China.
are
They
gonna
would
choose
destroy both
strength, not
economies
surrender when
within
it
the
comes to the
first week
CCP.
of a war
It's
with
not going to
China.
happen.
It's
Yeah.
never going to happen.
It's not going to
It's
happen.
stupid. What are you going to say? Cruise missiles one way and cargo ships the other way? No,
Universal
it's not going to
deportation
happen.
for all undocumented immigrants and their children, even if the children are citizens of the United States.
Ooh,
Under what legal premise would you expel U.S. citizens?
that's right, Lucid.
So the first
He
thing I
did.
want to say is I agree with everything. The Republicans on the stage are on the right side of this issue. Militarize the southern border.
Oh, God.
Stop funding
No,
sanctuary cities.
wrong.
And end foreign aid to Mexico and Central America
He
to
just killed
end
it. I
the
love
incentives
tacos.
to come across.
God.
But I do go a step further. You're right about that, Ilya.
The CIA ain't going to be happy about that.
Ending birthright citizenship.
The military
You
industrial
got the CIA
complex.
fighting the National Guard
This
in
this country.
Juarez.
Now, the left will howl about the Constitution and the 14th Amendment. The difference between me and them is I've actually read the 14th Amendment. What it says is that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the laws and jurisdiction thereof are citizens. So nobody believes that the kid of a Mexican diplomat in this country enjoys birthright citizenship. Not a judge or legal scholar in this country will disagree with me on that. Well, if the kid of a Mexican diplomat doesn't enjoy birthright citizenship, then neither does the kid of an illegal migrant who broke the law to come here. And as the father of two sons, it is hard for me to look them in the eye and say, you have to follow the law when our own government fails to follow its own laws.
They are missing such an opportunity to grab the Latin vote here tonight with some
actual
actual practical policies.
The rule of law in the United States of America.
I mean, they not realize there's a Univision lady sitting at the desk. I mean, come on, like how much more of a flag do you need?
He doesn't want those brown people.
That's right. He just wants his brown people. Yeah.
The 14th Amendment, it was certainly written as it relates to slavery, not as it relates to illegal immigration. It's been applied to illegal immigration. So the challenge that we face is, in fact, one that has to do
yes,
with
exactly, Steve. Militarized borders. It's one of his more stupid ideas.
And frankly, if you come here illegally, you are not. Now, surviving a Supreme Court argument is something I can't tell you. But from a perspective of the Constitution, I think it's simple that clearly it was designed for slavery and not for illegal immigration. I'll go one step further, though. When we have a conversation about the things that are happening on this stage,
I didn't understand what a damn thing he just said.
We were all good people, and I appreciate that because last debate,
Marcus, he might be pulling a little card out a little bit on that one. You know,
I can't imagine
I want to listen.
This is why Vivek is annoying. Look at his face. every person that grew up in suburban Southern California knew the annoying quote unquote poor kid like Vivek.
Hold on.
Look at Vivek's face.
Hold on. They're fighting.
I want to respond. These are good people who are tainted by a broken system, and it's not the fault of anybody who's involved.
Some of us are tainted.
Excuse me. Thank you for speaking while I'm interrupting. While I'm speaking.
You said
If I may finish.
You can't be on both sides.
Here we go. The shit show. Here we go.
I need to go back to one.
We know it dictates this in China. Everybody knows that.
They're all doing the Trump hands. Come on.
I actually agree with
Why is there half Cowboys like
Time to get dirty.
Hold on.
Exactly. So if I may, I agree with Ron DeSantis on China. When every other CEO expanded into the Chinese market, you know what I did with my first company? We opened a subsidiary in China. But you know what I did that was different than every other company? We got the hell out of there. And when I started my next company, Strive, right
before you ran for president.
Right when I started my next company, Strive, to compete against BlackRock. Excuse me. To compete against BlackRock, I made a commitment that we would never do business in China. And I will say something.
I think you have more than time to explain your point.
Well, if I was interrupted by a lot of
explain your
people here,
point.
I want to be respectful because I believe
you were respectful last debate.
but I do not believe in these. We're sitting here in the Reagan Library.
Yes, I wish you
in
did
the
not think it
honor
was
of
midnight
Ronald
in
Reagan's
America.
library, if I may. From
This is great.
From one admirer of Ronald Reagan to another.
Dude, that right there is going to be a meme tomorrow.
Him like telling him to shut up.
I want to hear about that.
Let's have a policy debate.
Just start fighting. Just start fucking scrapping.
Let's have a policy debate.
Come on, Doug.
Look at Mike Pence on the end. Look at him on the end.
Yo, let me keep it real.
In 2017, the Trump-Pence administration canceled DACA, which put the legal status of 600,000 Dreamers in the hands of the courts. Dreamers work,
right,
and they pay taxes. As president, if the Supreme Court ends DACA, would you work with Congress to reach a permanent solution for Dreamers?
Well, first, let me say I'm glad Vivek pulled out of his business deal in 2018 in China. That must have been about the time you decided to start voting in presidential elections. So,
shots fired.
Elections. So,
Pence had that one loaded up.
Shots fired.
I negotiated the Remain in Mexico policy with the Mexican government. We used economic power to bring the Mexican government to the table. We built hundreds of miles of border wall. And despite what's said here today, we reduced illegal immigration and asylum abuse by 90%. And as president of the United States, I can do it again. And the truth is we need to fix a broken immigration system, and I'll do that as well. But first and foremost, a nation without borders is not a nation. And we have to secure the southern border of the United States of America. I know how to do it, and we will do it again. Let me say one other thing about China.
Vice President,
Would you negotiate with Congress to
give a solution to the problem that Dreamers have right now. They are on a limbo.
Well, let me tell you, I served in Congress for 12
Why are they
years.
giving
although
him
it
2
seemed
questions in a
longer.
row?
Because he's not answering,
You know, something
and
I've done
he was
different than
the
everybody on
administration
this
as part of it was
stage
responsible for
is
dismantling this.
I've actually
So-
secured reform in Congress. You know,
Oh, really?
You know, Ron, you talk a really good game
Okay.
about cutting spending, but you've
deflect.
increased spending in
Deflect.
Florida by 30%.
Exactly. Yeah. Here
When
we
I
go.
was a member of Congress in 2006, right after Hurricane Katrina,
2006.
I led House.
I had a
Conservative-
Kyocera flip phone, and
That's the year I graduated high
Can
school.
be done, but as I said
Damn,
in the last
I mean,
debate, I'll
you
say
just
again,
made
this
me
is
feel
no
old
time
as
for
shit, but
on-the-job
okay.
training. I'm going to be ready on day one to get Congress.
everyone here is missing a big part of the opportunity for tonight's debate. If somebody could articulate an actual border policy that balanced these issues, they could really jump in the polls, especially
You
with the
guys
DACA
ever
issue.
have mud fights where you just threw mud
Hold on.
clumps at
Where's he going with this?
Make America safer as
all this
rising
is.
crime plagues our cities.
We're gonna come back to
Oh,
that.
they're like, I'm ready with my statement.
In moments.
All right, good deal. All right, Eric, you had something about what DeSantis said.
So I had shoot. All right, it was DeSantis was talking about cutting taxes in the state of Florida. He actually passed the largest tax increase in the state of Florida whenever he mandated that internet sales and online sales tax would be collected in the state of Florida for businesses that sell online in the state of Florida.
Yeah, imagine
So,
that, right? He wants to live every
literally,
hour.
he's not going to say, well, I made the largest tax increase in the history of the state of Florida. So that's what he actually did. Before that, I took some notes here. I was going to say, if I was DeSantis, I would make Kristi Noem my VP candidate now because she actually kept her state open and he didn't. And female, she checks all the boxes. Libertarians might give them some credit for that. And then even before that, it might have been before we went live, I had this idea, like, you know how DeSantis is supposed to debate the dude from California?
Yeah.
What if
that sucks?
What if Vivek debated RFK?
So
that
I
would be
think that
one of
right
the
now
most-
part of the RNC I think pledge for these candidates is they're not allowed to debate anyone outside of the Republican Party right now.
What if they had a town hall, not a debate?
That would be a way to get around it. But yeah, dude,
The
I-
Gavin Newsom thing, DeSantis is happening. That's already scheduled.
Yeah, that's what I'm. So I'm guessing the RNC must have christened that one, right?
You're gonna have
maybe
to
it's
have.
because Newsom isn't a candidate yet, even though he said he won't be.
I
But,
think
like,
it
That might be the out. That might be the out.
I
Yeah.
think it really hurt. One thing that stuck out to me when Tim Scott was talking about the auto workers wanting less work and more money, I'm like, that's the fucking government. That's Congress. They work 100. Michael, you may know this. How many days a year does Congress actually work?
I mean, it can
Like
vary,
they're-
but yeah, it's not like they're not putting in
100 days, probably.
They're not putting in like about 3 to
It's
4 months of work.
120 some days, yeah. So what is that? 4 months out of 12 months, and they're talking about they need to go back to where Congress was part time, where they showed up in the fall after the harvest to take care of the nation's work, and then they went back to their states and took care of things locally. That's what this government needs to do, in my humble opinion.
Man, you know,
I
Eric,
mean-
you bring up a good point here. I'm sitting here. You're right. The out for that is that Newsom is not declared candidate right now,
Yeah.
and so that's why the out is happening. What's interesting about this is I feel like they kind of picked maybe the highest polling guy, maybe DeSantis, but maybe the least qualified to debate a Gavin Newsom, right? I mean, as much as you might hate a Gavin Newsom from a totalitarian standpoint, he does manage the 5th largest economy in the world. You know,
Yeah.
he's the executive of the 5th largest economy in the world, and so. I mean, he's going to be sharp on some things. He really is. And this might be the christening of him to kind of take over for Biden here in 2024. They're looking to hand that off to somebody. It
does remind me of that Barack Obama moment where he spoke at the Democratic National Convention in LA. And one thing about Gavin, I honestly think he ruined his chances at national electability with what he did yesterday. when he increased the taxes on guns and ammo by 11%.
Oh yeah.
The reason I say that, because that's just not going to fly in any upper Midwest state with even Democrats, because I think we're coming back.
All right, we're coming back to the debate here, guys. Let's see.
To add on to you, Marcus, the largest increase of gun purchasers from 2020 to now are African American and females.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Like, that's not gonna fly. Y'all
Let's go to the audio, Marcus. Let's see what's going on. They're going to start asking crime questions.
1 second here.
Over the streets of Philadelphia.
Crime.
You said in the last debate that you would use U.S. attorneys to prosecute crimes local prosecutors won't, but they are stretched as well, and they could not handle all of the lawlessness, the shoplifting, all the carjackings, the armed robberies. They're all surging. Progressive prosecutors were elected by their constituents, and they can't be fired by a president. So what would you do to end the revolving door of criminality?
Well, look, Dana, the only one on this stage who's done it. For 7 years, I ran the 5th largest office in this country at the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey, and we set records for the number of prosecutions that we brought that still have not been broken. And the reason was that we went after the crime that was affecting people's lives. And as president, I will appoint an attorney general and instruct that attorney general that you are to put all the resources that are necessary to bring our cities back under control. The fact is, they will be stretched. There's no doubt about that, but that's what they take the job for, because they love the idea of enforcing the law. We've got to bring law and order back to this country, and not just in our cities. But we need law and order back everywhere. We need law and order back in our suburbs. People are threatened there. We need it in our rural areas. People feel threatened there. And we need it in Washington, D.C. also. And Donald Trump should be here to answer for that, but he's not. And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself.
I
know you're watching.
Shots fired.
And you're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not
Bring up
here
Scientific
tonight
comment again. That was
because
great.
You're afraid of being on the
Mike
stage
Pence
and
looks like an
defending
illegal
your
immigrant from the
record.
land of
You're
dragons.
ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep
Bruce
doing that.
Libertarian, I agree.
No
That
one
was
up
my
here's
fave
gonna call you
GOP for
Donald
picture
Trump
VP
anymore.
or even
We're going to
POTUS.
call you Donald Duck.
All right. I want to ask Governor DeSantis, you
He is.
a couple of prosecutors
But I
in your
mean,
state, but as governor, as
But
president,
Alex
you do
Jones
not
is
have the
right
ability to do that.
80% of the
How
time.
do you think about dealing with the
He's
root
right about
causes
frogs,
of crime,
too. I've
especially this
seen them
revolving
myself in
door
the
of the
swamp.
criminals?
Look,
They
the
take
frogs
their
are
property,
turning
commit
dead.
another crime.
Well, the
Atrazine.
crime in these cities is one of the strongest signs of the decaying of America. We can't be successful as a country if people aren't even safe to live in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco. Just being in Southern California.
The
over
truth is
last
that this is going to be a
Well,
universal issue. You know, in the summer 2020, this was made out to be a racist issue, a racial issue. This will be a universal issue in 2024. People are tired of this shit in the cities.
We back the blue. We support
Oh,
the
shit.
men and
Oh,
women of law
yeah.
enforcement.
Shut up.
Keeping us safe. We have a
We back the
50-year
tyranny.
low in the crime rate.
Go on,
And yes, when I
tyrannize
had
those
2
people.
progressive prosecutors that weren't following the law in Florida,
Who the hell
I
is this?
removed them from their posts, and the people of Florida are safer.
Sandra
as a
likes
result of it.
DeSantis.
As president, I
You're
will
gross.
use the Justice Department to bring civil rights cases against all of those left-wing Soros-funded prosecutors. We're not going to let them get away with it anymore. We want to reverse
Nice.
this country's decline. We need to choose law and order over rioting and disorder.
So the real answer that these candidates should give is they should look straight at the podium and say, "There's not much I can do as president on this issue." That's what they really should say.
Yeah.
And then they should say, "You as citizens need to demand what you want in your cities. This is what you should ask for."
Under DeSantis' violent crime increase in Jacksonville since he's been governor, I'm just saying.
What's your actual plan?
Yeah, Jared. I think that's what his kind of role is in
and
this
I
whole
actually
thing
did
is to
it
try
in
to just
South
take numbers
Carolina,
away.
Too. You know what we knew in
Who?
South Carolina was you
Chris
take care of
Christie's
those
number.
who take
He's
care
there
of
to
you.
just. He's
We
part of
have
the
to
Never
start
Trumper
taking care
crowd.
of law
So
enforcement, but it's not just taking care of them with words.
But
it's
you
making sure that
really
you
should be
also
trying to beat
follow
the other
through on what they
Republicans
do.
right now? No?
we have a lot of
I think.
stolen
I mean, he
guns
knows
on
he's
the
not going to get the
street. Well,
nomination,
these
so
law
he's
enforcement
there to
officers,
take
they
3 or
arrest
4
these
points,
people,
hopefully
and then
away
they
is
go
what
and
they
they're
kind of
let out
think.
the very
Yeah,
next
no.
day. So law enforcement feels like they don't. No one has their back. We have to
I
start
would say Biden
prosecuting
sucks enough
according to the
to
law.
not
We
really
have to
change the
make sure we
outcome
have
of
the
where
backs
somebody
of
would
law
vote if they're
enforcement,
already a
and we
Republican.
have
Hold
to
on.
make sure that we're a country of law and order. But I want to go back to China.
I've heard
because
3
I
of the
don't think
same
we
answers
spent
from 3
enough time
people.
on that. Right now, we have to look at what government's doing to hurt us against China too. You you have a company, U.S. Antibiotics, that produces
The police are stretched worse than Chris
number one
Christie's pants.
antibiotic
Yes,
that we
that's what
need.
happens when you
And
things
right now,
aren't
there is
crimes
a
get
company
considered
in
crimes.
Bristol, Tennessee, that produces that. Yet our federal government
Yeah,
only
yeah, I mean-
gets
Hold on,
it from
look
China.
at this.
We need to be focusing on companies that produce in America and supporting those companies that produce in America, not companies that are helping China.
Governor, we will be talking foreign policy later.
She's playing catch up now.
Thank you, Stuart. We're going to stay in the topic of crime because
Nobody's
it
running this
affects
debate yet. There's no clear
all of
winner in my
us.
opinion.
No,
I-
not at all.
For the first time ever,
This whole
the
debate is the
Union
soup
showed
sandwich.
that mass shootings and gun safety are one of the most important issues for Latino voters. Mental health concerns
Come on,
are
Doug.
not unique to the
on,
United
Doug.
States,
Send
but
it.
gun violence is. What is your specific plan to
Blank.
curb gun violence?
I like her
Well,
playing, mate.
First, we need to know is understand is I think that the liberal left seems to be just completely bent on prosecuting law-abiding citizens that are gun owners, because every solution they have to this is take away the Second Amendment rights of Americans, and somehow that's going to solve the problem. But all these cities that we're talking about that you showed the videos of tonight, they have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. So we know that that's not what's working. What we have to do is get back to the core issues about the family. We have to get back to behavioral health and mental health. We've got to get back to actually enforcing the laws these people talked about. And like we've done in North Dakota, where we've got the goal and we're on the track to be the most military-friendly state in the nation. We've got the most military and the most support of what we're doing in terms of law enforcement, because the morale is down because we've been defunding the police, because they've been attacked in the press. The police have become the
Doug
bad
is
guys.
losing
when
me.
They're the one.
Yeah.
There's all
Yeah.
these jobs available in America.
At
Why would you
first
be a
he was
policeman
winning.
if people don't even respect them? Every time I see a policeman, the first thing I say is thank you. And so does everybody else in my family. And
The answer with the gun violence thing from one of these candidates needs to be just to first express that, violence is violence. Start there and then build your argument from that point.
Ramaswamy, according to Customs and
I think if we got rid of the war on drugs,
Hold on.
of fentanyl is seized at
Oh,
official
they
border
gave some to
crossings.
buyback.
And 57% of the smugglers are U.S. citizens.
the smugglers.
How would you stop fentanyl brought into the country, mostly by U.S. citizens?
Legalize
Okay, now
marijuana.
hold on. He gave an
Two
answer
sides
on
to this, and
Clint
we have to be very
lockdown.
honest
Let's see what he
about
says here.
One is we do have to seal that southern border. Building the wall is not enough. They're building cartel-financed tunnels underneath that wall. Semi-trucks can drive through them. We have to use our own military to seal the Swiss cheese of a southern border. But we also have to be honest. There's a demand-side problem in this country, too, a mental health epidemic. I met family in Iowa.
Eric, I think you're
Two
squealing a
parents,
little bit.
Kathy and Derek.
that me?
They lost their son Sebastian,
so.
17 years old. He bought Percocet on Snapchat, and then he died. Why did he die? Because it was
100%.
laced
This is
with
the
fentanyl.
best.
That is
This,
closer
I've
to
called him this.
bioterrorism, not a drug.
Mute your mic real
Heard
quick, Eric.
that?
Poisoning.
Is
So
that
it is
me?
our job to make
Yeah,
sure
mute your mic
that
real quick.
never happens. But it's also
I
our
don't-
job to make
where's
sure that
the mic
17-year-olds
mute
don't
button?
turn to Percocet via Snapchat.
Oh, wait.
I don't hear,
All right.
I don't hear
Bring
anything.
back mental
Mute.
health care in this country, not with
Yeah.
pumping pharmaceuticals, but with
No.
faith-based approaches that restore purpose and meaning in the next generation of Americans. Many of them are
You don't hear
giving
that?
into social
No,
media.
I hear it,
I don't
but
find
I
him
muted it.
inspirational.
Didn't
Hold
stop
on.
it.
But if you're 16 years old or under, you should not be using an addictive social media product, period. This
Okay.
is something that we can both agree on, and we can revive both the mental health of this country
I think he's
while
losing
stopping
his
the
moment.
fentanyl epidemic that will kill more people this year than who died on 9/11. And I refuse to be a passive bystander sitting in the White House like the hollowed out husk of a current president.
Mute,
we have.
unmute ain't
We
helping.
will step up and address this problem to stand for Americans and our children.
And the thing that's frustrating, I think, for people that know what's going on here is this entire issue was caused by government and prohibition, right?
Yeah.
And if anybody was willing to go ahead and educate some voters over a minute right now, they could dominate this argument.
Ron Paul did it back in
Yeah.
2000, and it might have been 2012.
Hold
And
on.
apparently, the
Hey,
people that had
let's not
rented
get-
before were
I don't
using
want
drugs. The
Eric to get
infant
mad
was
about this
crawling,
guy.
the toddler was crawling on the carpet and ingested fentanyl
that sound?
residue and died. Are we just going to sit here and let this happen, this carnage happen in our country? I am not going to do that. So I guarantee you on day one, this border is going to be a day one issue for me as president. We're going to declare it a national emergency. Yes, we'll build the wall. We'll do remain in Mexico. But those Mexican drug cartels are going to be treated like the foreign terrorist organizations that they are.
Yeah, Break, I want to talk about the fentanyl thing. So,
We're going to move on
Yeah.
to a different issue. Hold on, sir. Vice
There's
President
probably
Pence.
19 people talking right now.
Just last month, Vice President Pence You said if elected, you would repeal all Obamacare mandates. However, you also made that same promise in 2016. And at that
Not
time,
going to happen.
Trump Pence had congressional
Not
majorities.
going to happen as long as
for
the
at
major
least the
parties
first
are
2
in
years.
office. Not going to happen.
And you did not deliver.
Too
on
much
that
money
promise.
for the
So
healthcare
Obamacare,
industry.
Right now, it is more
They're not gonna
popular than ever.
Hey guys, I'm
Why
gonna
should
unplug
Americans
my
trust
camera
you
and
if
plug
you
it back
become
in and see if
president
Okay.
that's
to
what
fix
I
that, or is Obamacare here to stay?
Well, first, let me speak to the mass shootings issue, and then I'll answer that question. It's an important one, Dana.
No, it's still there.
Look, I'm someone that
So it's not
believes that
Eric.
justice delayed is justice denied. And as a
Let me mute
father
my
of
mic,
3, as a
and then I'll be
grandfather
able
of 3 beautiful little girls,
It's your mic, Marcus.
I am sick and tired of these mass shootings happening in the United States of America. And if I'm president of the United States, I'm going to go to the Congress of the United States, and we're going to pass a federal expedited death penalty for
Oh, my
anyone
God.
involved in a mass shooting so that they will meet their fate in months, not years. It is unconscionable that
Well, they should have
the,
an expedited death sentence right when it
shooter,
happens,
Ron,
right?
He's actually going to spend the rest of his life behind bars in Florida. That's not justice. We have to mete out justice and send a message to these would-be killers that you are not going to live out your days behind bars. You're going to
Well, they
make
wouldn't if
justice
you had
in
an
this
armed
state.
citizenry,
Does that mean
Mr.
Obamacare is
Pence.
here to stay?
Is it better now?
Yes, you're better. Eric, if you're listening,
Thank you
it
for
was not your
reiterating the
fault.
question,
So,
because I'd love to answer it. Look,
I still blame you,
I think
Eric,
it's one of the
if
I think
you're
it's one of
listening.
the choices
Where is-
here.
yes,
My
let me
former
text and see if
running
he's-
mate,
he can
Donald
get back in
Trump, actually has a plan to start to consolidate
Always
more
wanna
power
blame
in
Whitey.
Washington, D.C., consolidate more power in the executive branch. If I'm president of the United States, it's my intention to make
He
the
does.
federal government smaller by returning to the states those resources and programs that are rightfully theirs under the 10th
What
Amendment
up?
it wasn't you,
of the
Eric. It
Constitution.
wasn't you.
That means
Hold on.
Yeah,
all
I
of
heard
it,
y'all.
Hold on, we're
all
on some
housing
hot
it
stuff
wasn't
here,
your
though,
fault.
guys. Hold
all
on.
Clearly was
HHS
your fault.
funding, all of it goes back to the states. We'll shut down the Federal Department of Education. We'll allow states to innovate. We're going to revive federalism in America, and states are going to help
I'm not sure
bring
we've got an
America
answer on
back.
Obamacare staying, but Stu, go ahead.
May I remind everyone to keep within their time frame so that we can get as many questions in as possible. This question for Governor DeSantis. Over 26 million Americans
They muted
don't
his
have
mic.
insurance coverage. Governor DeSantis, 2.5 million.
I was wondering where that was. I was
are in
like, that's
your
not me.
state.
They cut his mic, yeah.
That's worse than the national average. Can Americans trust you on this?
Well, I think this is a symptom of our overall economic decline. Everything has gotten more expensive. You see insurance rates are going through the roof. People that are
shouldn't have
going
touched
to
on
get
that in
groceries.
Florida.
I spoke with a woman in Iowa, and she said, you know, for the first time in my life, I'm having to take things out of my grocery cart when I get to the checkout line because the total goes up so quickly. So this is very real, and people are hurting out there. So we've got to address
Crime
the
Act.
underlying problem with Bidenomics, the overspending, taking all Biden's rules and regulations. I'm going to throw them in the trash can on day one. You're not going to have to worry about that. We're going to open up all of our energy. We will be energy dominant in this country. That will lower your gas prices. And what we need to do with healthcare is recognize our healthcare is putting patients at the back of the bus. We have big pharma, big insurance, and big government, and we need to tackle that and have more power for the people and the doctor-patient relationship.
Governor, why is your record in Florida on insurance worse than the national
Yeah,
average?
he should be
Our
saying
state's
Well,
a very big
hurricanes,
state.
for one.
We've got a lot of folks that come. Of course, we've had a population boom. We also don't have a lot of welfare benefits in Florida. You know, we're basically say we want
that
to, this
doesn't
is a
work.
field of dreams. You can do well in the state, but we're not going to be like California and have massive numbers of people on government programs without work requirements. We believe you work and you got to do that. And so that goes for all the welfare benefits. And you know what that's done, Stuart? Our unemployment rate is the lowest amongst any big state. We have the highest GDP growth amongst any big state. And even CNBC, no fan of mine, ranked Florida the #1 economy in America.
Governor, we're moving on.
On the topic of healthcare,
That was a good move.
Governor Haley, healthcare is the leading cause of bankruptcy for American families, accounting for 2/3 of all personal bankruptcies. As president, how you protect Americans who get sick from financial ruin?
First
And
of all, how can we
bland
be the best
GOP answer
country in the world
incoming.
and
3,
have the
2,
most
1. Here you
expensive
go.
health care in the world? We have an issue.
They
My
are
mom was in the
ridiculous.
hospital, and when she was in the hospital, they tried to bring her a couple of Tylenol, and she said, I don't need it. And they said, honey, go ahead and take it because you're paying for it anyway. Why is it that when we got the bill, the insurance company and the hospital negotiated the bill for her without her having anything to do with it? When I am president, we will break all of it, from the insurance company to the hospitals, to the doctor's offices, to the PBMs, to the pharmaceutical companies. We will make it all transparent, because when you do that, you will realize that's what the problem is. Second thing is you've got to deal with tort law. The lawyer, the
Okay, we're gonna have
doctors
to talk
don't
about
give you
this
the
on the
10
break,
tests
too.
because they want to. It's because
We
of the
got enough time.
90% chance they'll get sued. And then we need to bring competition back to healthcare, get rid of certificate of need systems, and make sure that they can compete. We have to put the patient in the driver's seat. They've been in the back seat for way too long. And once we give the patient the ability to decide their health care, deciding which plan they want, that is when we will see magic happen. But we're going to have to make every part of the industry open up and show us where their warts are, because they all have them, and we need to fix this on behalf of the American people.
And that's what we did. Do you have a better way in 30 seconds?
Well, yes, we're not talking about the real problem ever. We talk about why do we have the most expensive health care in the world? It's because the federal government got involved the same way they did with EVs, and they said, we're going to subsidize a particular kind of software back in 2008 under
That's
Obama.
right, Epic, EMR.
And they said,
Yes.
hey, we're going to do this. It's going to make everybody more productive. All of you that are watching have been to a doctor's office when the doctor's got his back to you and their hands on a
computer.
keyboard.
That's right. It's Epic,
The
EMR,
only
electronic medical
industry in
records.
the world that's ever absorbed $1 trillion of IT and became less productive. They saw less patients per day is U.S. healthcare
Yep.
because they were subsidizing a certain
Well,
kind
it
of
was a backbone
technology.
for CMS,
It wasn't about
you know,
improving
obligations
healthcare.
and
It was about
requirements.
picking winners
Yeah.
and
Some
losers.
bubbles
Every
here.
time the federal government's involved, whether it's higher education, healthcare, or now the auto industry, things get more expensive and less competitive.
I'm
You see what
having
I'm saying,
a
guys?
hard
He's the
time
most
trying to fuck with
libertarian.
Doug still after that law enforcement shit.
Yeah, it's still the most libertarian on the stage, in my opinion.
Yeah, he is,
He's a
but
Republican.
Doug
He's a
went down like
conservatarian.
20%.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
That guy stole our guns.
So
No,
on the
fuck him.
fentanyl
Fuck
thing,
him.
guys, we've talked about this, Marcus. We talked about this on the podcast a couple times. Is nobody wants to on that stage is going to say the truth, which is the federal government caused this entire thing, right? No one's going to say, "Hey,
Government is the
this
problem."
whole that's right. This whole thing started with what OxyContin. What happened? The FDA approved it, said it wasn't addictive. Remember, they let they gave the rubber stamp to say start prescribing this shit like candy. People got addicted to it. If you remember in Afghanistan, we had Marines guarding opium fields, right, for precursors to these pharmaceuticals made by these large companies. There's no coincidence that the pullout of Afghanistan, the troop withdrawal, drawdown, all coincided with the DEA's war on opiates. And then soon, boom, we took away people off of it, and the black market answers the question with fentanyl, a synthetic one. Here you go. And here we are. And they're going to double down on the same policies that caused it in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one was talking about how medical malpractice, negligence, and mistakes are at an epidemic scale. We are supposed to trust our healthcare system with our lives. Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing too. That I'm glad that he brought up the EMR thing, because nobody also wants to touch the political hot potato, which is Medicare. Most health providers out there, large institutions, their number one priority is to comply with CMS guidelines. Right? Because 65 to 70% of their revenues are coming from Medicare. So Medicare, essentially, the CMS secretary and the guidelines dictate essentially what those places are going to be like. And everything else is secondary. So like, for instance, the No Surprise Act, which is a convoluted, crazy piece of legislation, 220 pages to try to attempt to tell people you should know what something's going to cost before you pay for it. You know why it's so convoluted, Marcus? Because they don't want it to actually work. They don't want it to actually work. They don't want that to work. That doesn't benefit the people that keep paying those assholes off. Sorry, I get mad about both those two issues.
I understand where you're coming from, because my wife actually worked for a company for over 20 years that dealt with CMS, and they were originally, that's where we met. It was originally a commercial healthcare plan, but CMS and the federal government made it so difficult to be in that business that they cut the commercial line. I got laid off. She was about to have my son. I got another job. And fast forward almost 20 years, that same company, because of CMS, closed its shop because they couldn't keep up with the constant regulation. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, like, I don't want to out my wife too bad, but, you know, she's a pharmacist, so she deals with this all the time, every day. And the issues where the government gets in the way of the free market of really solving these problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They make so many regulations where, for example, pharmacists can't prescribe medication. You know what I mean? It was like, but they are the subject matter expert on medication. So they should be able to prescribe medication if they understand it, as long as they know, like you have a conversation with my wife. She's also a libertarian, but she's, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to out her right now.
So Eric, your wife probably can
can
probably confirm this. So when I was trying to write like my healthcare policy stuff, I actually interviewed like a pharmacist group here in Arkansas, just about like how their business worked, what their biggest hurdles were. And this guy brought up an interesting point. He said, Michael, if you walked into my pharmacy tomorrow and you had Blue Cross Blue Shield, for instance, and your insurance copay for a medication was $25.
Yeah.
He said there's certain classes of drugs and certain drugs that you might have a cheaper price as a cash patient, but I'm not allowed to tell you that, because if I tell you that, I will lose the line item and access to the insurance company.
So
that's
exactly, I'm not to interrupt, but I know exactly. You're talking about pharmacy benefits managers, and my wife has been, lobbying against them forever. They're like the middleman in between. So, and I come from like a craft beer background. I'm passionate about it. Think of like a 3-tier system. You got the people that brew the beer and the people that drink the beer, or even sell the beer to the people that drink it. But in Florida, you got a 3-tier system where you have to have a distributor in between the person that makes it and the person that sells it to the buyer. You know what I mean? Like that makes no sense. That's honestly the reason why the cost of the beer goes up.
Yeah.
So you
Required middlemen.
Same thing as the cost of your medication goes up.
I just want to say, Michael brought up a great point on government overregulation. But I want to, since your wife is a pharmacist, can she get us that medical grade libertarian marijuana? That's what I want to know.
Well, in California, you already have that.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm trying to get a new plug. And, I know Florida has medical, right?
Give me the stink eye.
Okay, they're coming.
We're coming back. We're coming back.
I brought you up before you came out.
All right, let me unmute them over
She's
here.
right over there. She's giving me the stink eye.
Hello, Eric's wife.
I don't like her anyway.
You say school choice.
Not his wife, but this lady on TV.
No. Not it. I like your
Not
wife.
Eric's
I don't
wife.
like
The
her.
lady on TV.
And even the current
Okay, hold on. Here we go, guys.
will be fully implemented until 2027. Parents can't wait 4 years for a fix. So what would you do right now?
I'm going to mute real
choice
quick.
isn't the only answer, but I'll tell you, it's not out of a lack of trying that we didn't try and get school choice in South Carolina. What I'll tell you, first of all, is we have to acknowledge the fact that 67% of our 8th graders are not proficient in reading or math. Over 80% of our 8th graders aren't proficient in history or civics.
Who's the first
and
candidate
recently
to
they
mention
came
the
out
Department
and
of
said our
Education
12
up
and
here in this
13-year-olds
question?
are scoring at the lowest levels
No,
they've been
she
scoring
hasn't
in
mentioned it
reading,
yet.
math,
Like
and
abolishing the DOE. Let's see
First thing
here.
we've got to do is we've got to make sure we catch
I think
our kids
if
back
it
up.
goes to
We
Vivek,
have
he'll be the
make
first one to
sure they
say
can
it.
read. A child that can't read by 3rd grade is 4 times less likely to graduate high school. We
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
do
yeah, Nikki. We know the kids are
we need
fucking dumb right
complete
now, and it's not.
transparency in the classroom.
You know,
no parent should ever wonder what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. We need to make sure that we have school choice so that there's competition. We need to move all the programs from the federal government down to the states and let states decide what education looks like in their states. And we need to start building things in America again. Let's put vocational classes back in our high schools, and let's get our kids building the things that we know that we can make. When we start to focus on that and really bring in that parental involvement, that's when we'll start to see a difference. But we've got to get parents back included. We've got to quit spending time on this DEI and CRT and instead focus on financial literacy, on digital literacy, and on making sure that our kids know what they need to do to have the jobs of the next generation.
On the subject of education, a question for Governor Christie.
That was some red meat.
Students in your state are getting high marks on their report cards, but minorities are not doing well with math and reading. Black and Hispanic students averaging 29 points lower than white students in New Jersey. Would you address minorities first?
The way Chris Christie
You have to
looks
address all
at
students. And look, in our state, Stuart, frankly, before I was governor, that gap was close to 50%. And what we did was institute more charter schools and more Renaissance schools and more public school choice. in New Jersey with innovative solutions in cities
Thank you for that,
like
Kenneth.
Camden,
I didn't
where
catch it
now
earlier.
we
And
took
civic
what was the
literacy. Yeah,
worst
there you
school
go,
district
Lucy.
in America during my time, and we have now increased that by nearly 40%.
Department of
in terms their
Education,
proficiency.
Mr. May.
It can be done when you give people choice. But let's tell the truth to everybody about what this is. This public school system is no longer run by the public. It is run by the teachers' unions in this country. Randi Weingarten and her crew.
I mean, that, you know, the
absolutely
real way
struggling. They
to
are
address
taking
that,
the
Marcus,
worst
that
of their
that
members and
sort of
defending
cultural
them
issue is,
rather than
you know,
advocating for our kids.
drag
And
queens
when
are like the
you
least
have the
problem
President
right now in your
of the
public
United
school, right?
States sleeping
Like,
with a member of the
100%
teachers
agree. I haven't
Yeah.
there is no
one
chance.
That's the
ever.
least problem. Like, your kids can't read, people.
Teachers
You know,
union every day.
And they come to
have an
school hungry.
advocate
And
we might
for
not have to. We might not
science
have to
every day
send a guy an
for
address
the
to read
worst
to them
of
if they
their
could read for
teachers,
themselves.
not for our students to be the
Yeah.
best they can
Maybe
be.
the way we're
A
teaching
president of the United States
education is a
to take
problem.
on the teachers union.
I have a
It's in
lot
New
of
Jersey,
to say
and
about
I
that
will
subject
do
matter.
it as
We'll cover
president
that
of
on
the
the
United
podcast.
States.
Governor DeSantis, I have a question for you. Governor DeSantis, I have a question for you. Florida's new Black History curriculum says, quote,
Ooh.
slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. You have said slaves develop skills in spite of slavery, not because of it. But many are still hurt. For descendants of slaves, this is personal.
He didn't
What is
say
your
that,
message to
but
them?
So first of all, that's a hoax that was perpetrated by Kamala Harris. We are not going to be doing that. Second of all, that was written by descendants of slaves. These are great Black history scholars. So we need to stop playing these games.
I don't
Here's the
like
deal.
anti-Black
Our
Black
country's
people.
education system is in decline because it's focused on indoctrination, denying parents' rights. Florida represents the revival of American education. We're ranked #1 in the nation in education by U.S. News and World Report. My wife and I, we have a 6, 5, and 3-year-old. This is personal to us. We didn't just talk about universal school choice. We enacted universal school choice. We didn't just talk about Parents' Bill of Rights. We enacted the Parents' Bill of Rights.
Yeah,
we
right.
eliminated
We've
critical
talked
race
about that
theory, and
before
we
on
now
this
have
podcast, Lucid, about
American
changing the
civics
standards.
Constitution in our
One of the most
schools in a
racist
really
things you
big
can do,
way,
right, Marcus?
Just like President Reagan
100%.
asked for
Yeah.
in his farewell address back in 1989. Florida is showing how it's
That's
done.
right, scientific.
We're
Yes.
standing with parents, and our kids are benefiting.
Senator Scott, you oppose to these new standards. What is your message for Governor DeSantis?
There is not a redeeming quality in slavery. He and Kamala should have just taken the one sentence out. America has suffered because of slavery, but we've overcome that. We are the greatest nation on earth because we faced our demons in the mirror and made a decision. So often we think that all the issues, you talked about crime and education and healthcare, we always think that those issues go back to slavery. Here's the challenge though. Black families survived slavery. We survived poll
And they were doing
taxes
better
and
than white
literacy
families until
tests.
about
We survived
1974.
discrimination being woven into the laws
It
of our
was a
country.
lot
What was hard to
earlier than
survive
that.
was Johnson's Great Society.
It
where
really
they
takes a
decided
precipitous drop, about 74, kind of, if you look at it like on just a
where they
total macro
decided
level.
to take the black father out of the household to get a check in
This
the
is
mail.
true.
And you can now measure that in unemployment, in crime, in devastation. If you want to restore hope, you've got to restore the family, restore.
So Marcus, at the break, we're going to talk. We're going to have to. Yeah, you're going to have to be the one to like. You're the best. You're best to answer this question.
Our
So
nation continues
let's bring that one up at the break.
to go in the right direction. It's why I can say
That
I
sounds
have been
racist.
discriminated against, but America is not a racist country. Never, ever doubt who we are. We are the greatest
I
country.
disagree with
on God's
him
green
as
earth.
far
And
as the
frankly,
judicial system because
city
the
on
data,
hill
everybody likes
needs
to
a
talk about
brand new leader.
1350,
I'm asking
but
for
the
your
data
question for you,
on
Mr.
racial
Ramaswamy.
disparity in the criminal
Over
justice system is
10.7
just
million
as
students in over
profound.
18,000 public schools
let's hold
nationwide
those thoughts for the break because we're going to have a long one on that
to
one.
change their identity without parental notification. Governor Christie told Stewart last week that he would pass a federal law to protect parental rights. Would you try to do the same?
Can you imagine? We have to
I have to be
pass
very
a
clear
law
about this.
to protect parental
Transgenderism,
rights.
especially in kids, is
California
a
tried it
mental
this year.
health disorder. We have to acknowledge the truth of that for what it is.
I agree
I
with
met
him.
two
It
young
is a
women early in
mental
this
health
campaign.
On parental
I
rights
agree.
in schools.
Parents have the right to know. And you know what? The
They do.
hypocrisy
I mean,
of this
they
is,
do.
even New Hampshire
They do,
failed to actually
and
get
we
past
have a
a piece
conservative
of
school district
legislation
here, and they
The
did
very
a
people
policy
who
like
say
that,
this
Chino Valley
increases
Unified.
the
Hold on.
risk of suicide are also the ones saying that parents don't have the right to know about that increased risk of suicide.
That's right.
And I'm
There is some
sorry, it is not
inconsistency.
compassionate to affirm a kid's confusion. That is not compassion, that is cruelty. I met two young women, Chloe and Katie, early in this campaign, who are in their 20s, now regret getting double mastectomies and a hysterectomy. One of them will never have children. And the fact that we allowed that to happen in this country is barbaric. So I will ban genital mutilation or chemical castration under the age of 18, and parents have absolutely
Would you
the
try
right.
to pass a federal law that says parents should have that right?
We are going to require states absolutely have to follow that through.
Governor
We
Burgum just to
stand
follow
for
up on this
parental rights.
because
Yes.
you in your state you do not have a law that says parents can't be notified, but you want to be president. Would you try to pass a federal law to say parents have that right?
I think this is a state's issue, but I do want to say something because all night long we've been talking about issues about how it's broken in Washington, and I respect all of the people on the stage here for their 100+ years of public service. Thank you. But the reason
Problem is
why
Doug
we're not
missed one
talking
on that
about
one.
education or healthcare or safety being a problem in North Dakota is because we have a business leader. I've got more experience
Because of
as a
Medicare,
business
CMS,
leader
as you,
than I
we
think
just
this
talked
whole
about,
group
it's going to
combined. I
become
know
a
I've
federal
created more
issue.
jobs than everybody else
You're
on
going to have
stage,
CMS Secretary in
thousands
4 or
of
5 years
high-paying
say,
jobs
hey,
for
if you
that
don't do
meeting.
this, we're going to
So
withhold
as a
funding.
business leader, you come in and you treat the taxpayer like a customer. So in North Dakota, instead of fighting with the teachers unions, we actually created a K-12 coordinating council. Everybody gets in the room and the customer is
But
the
you
student.
do understand that this is an issue that many people in America really are concerned about, worried about parents and
Because y'all
notification in
injected it into
schools.
the conversation.
Yes, and that's why we have 50 platforms of innovation. That's why we have states. There are certain things the federal
I agree
government
with
is
that.
supposed to do. It's not the
I
Department
hate
of
this
Education
argument
that
because
needs
it's
to be
less than
assembled. We got to move it back to
of the
states. Do what we
population
did in
that
North Dakota.
has
And
that
The Federal
say,
Reserve,
here's a
the
choice
Federal
school,
Reserve is
here's
not
an old
scared when we
here's an
argue
old
about this
school, the
issue,
old way
people.
where the teachers union
Oh,
negotiates
yeah.
are trapped.
They love us
We
while
made
arguing
every
about this
school
issue.
in North
This
Dakota
is
an
a
innovation
non-issue.
school.
It-
Every
it's
school got out from under the
a
red tape
problem
and the
looking
things
for a
that
solution.
help teach the values
Yeah.
that we're trying to get,
Looking
like
for a
4-H,
problem.
like
That's what
FFA,
I
like
mean.
Yeah.
Girl Scouts.
It's a problem looking for a government
And by the
solution.
way, North
Yeah.
Dakota is now at the top of the median SAT scores in the country right now.
Vice President Pence, the Department of Homeland Security warns that violence against LGBTQ plus people is on the rise and intensifying.
On the rise.
According to a recent study, members of that community are 9 times more likely to be victims of violent hate crimes. As president, how would you protect this community from violent attacks and discrimination?
I'd make
Well,
sure
as
they can get
President of
guns
the
very
United
easily.
States, I'll stand up for the safety
Simple to the
and
point.
the civil
Yeah.
liberties of every American, from every background. And I want the American people to know that. But I want
He's
to
having
answer
to
the
walk
question as
his
well, Dana,
evangelical
He
tightrope
is
right here.
dry as
because
day
by way of full
Hold on.
disclosure, Chris,
bread.
you mentioned
What?
the president's
Being made to
situation.
toast.
I'm, my wife
He doesn't want to
is
answer
a
this
member of
question.
the teachers union, but I got to admit,
See,
I've been speaking with
he
a
does
teacher
not want to
for
talk
38
about this.
years.
Have
And,
y'all noticed
full
they
disclosure.
give the left-leaning
Education is a
questions
state
to the
local function.
Hispanic lady?
The state of Indiana
Yes.
has one of the
Well, and
very
that's
first school choice
by design.
programs in the
Yeah.
country.
Don't they
And
bring
when I was
their own
governor of the state
questions?
of Indiana, we doubled it.
I mean,
And
but
as to your question, Dana, let's be
don't
very,
Hispanics
Hold on, let's hear it.
vote?
Hold on.
when the Linn-Mar Community Schools in Iowa had a policy where you had to have a permission slip from your parents to get a Tylenol, but you could get a gender transition plan without notifying your parents. I weighed in with a foundation. That's not bad policy. That's crazy. We're going to stand up for the rights of parents, and we're going to pass a federal ban on transgender chemical or surgical surgery anywhere in the country. We've got to protect our kids from this radical gender ideology agenda, and we've got to empower parents at the state level with the ability to choose where their kids go to school, whether it's public, private, parochial, or homeschool. You empower parents, and our schools will straighten up and reflect our values and focus on the basics faster than you could possibly imagine.
Next subject.
Can I just say one thing?
China is
Mike Pence wears tidy
The
whities.
answer to this is attack the funding. If it wasn't for the profiteering in it, it wouldn't be going on.
China is investing
Oh, yeah,
heavily
the government
in
still
Where's that
continues
funding
to
coming from?
$80
Exactly.
billion
Start peeling the layers back and you find out you're
semiconductor
paying for it.
research and development. That is 1 CHIPS Act per year. Governor DeSantis, you say companies like Google and Meta have too much power. Doesn't going after them give China an edge?
No, I think you look at how our society's developed, they have huge amount of power over our society. They've cracked down on free speech. We're not saying you don't want them to do business, but you want it to be a free market. And right now they're monopolies. But this issue of China, I think, is really going to be fundamental. We have subcontracted out so much of our national needs to the CCP. We rely on them for a whole host of issues. We need to reshore and we need to decouple all those important industries. We need to get that back in the United States. They are our top geopolitical adversary by a country mile. Xi Jinping's got huge ambitions, not only in the Asia Pacific, but as you mentioned earlier, in our region. But ultimately, we've got to beat them on the economy. And so that's what we'll do as President of the United States.
Governor Christie, I wanted to follow up on this because 22% of American workers fear their jobs will be lost to
Exactly.
And you said in the past that the free market is the way to go. Would you retrain workers?
Thank you, Scientific. I figured there might have been a little slant on that. I wasn't knowledgeable enough to say.
Well,
so thank you.
I think artificial intelligence offers us is an extraordinary opportunity to expand well beyond the productivity that we have now, and to have Americans.
Can you imagine McDonald's run by AI just to make so many burgers so quick? I wouldn't have to wait so long in line.
They would never get it wrong.
I would never get it wrong. I can get 40 pieces in like a minute.
Opportunities for folks.
Fast food is worse than vaccines.
Who lose some of their jobs, and we should be doing that. And we should have more training available both at the county college level and the local level for people to be able to access it. So yes, I would be in favor of that.
This is the reason that I hate
duopoly
debates. We have a ton of generalities, no specifics, and no voter education occurring here.
They need a Republican in the middle of the stage.
And a freedom and governmental innovator.
I think the Gavin Newsom, Ron DeSantis debate is going to be something that we could really expand on as to why the duopoly is so bad. And I don't have any problem talking over Jabba the Hutt right now. I hope neither do you, because his great jelly tie and his 58-inch skirt,
I promise you, people at home,
you've
you've heard exactly everything he's saying right now before.
He has nothing good to say.
There's nothing
at all. Earlier, I misspoke. I said we need a Republican on the stage. I meant we need a libertarian.
We're back on China again.
TikTok.
Oh, here we are on TikTok.
Boxer and influencer.
Here comes the vegan.
Should the commander-in-chief be so easily persuaded by an influencer?
So the answer is I have a radical idea for the Republican Party. We need to win elections. And part of how we win elections is reaching the next generation of young Americans where they are. So when I get into office, I've been very clear. Kids under the age of 16 should not be using addictive social media. We're only going to ever get to declaring independence from China, which I favor, if we actually win.
You know, we didn't have to prohibit, tobacco for people to stop smoking. If you just educate people on these things, I think people will start making the right decisions eventually.
Reaching young people, and that's me. And let me level with all of you. I'm the new guy here.
You really think
so I know
that government
I have
should
to earn
be
your
telling
trust.
you how to raise your children?
What do you see? You see a young
Exactly,
man
and this is the party of
a
limited
hurry,
government here.
maybe a little
Marcus.
ambitious. Bit of a know-it-all.
You know, I have
it
two
seems at times. I'm here to
daughters,
tell
and they
you, no, I
approach
don't
social
know it
media
all.
differently. One
I
of them
will
is
listen.
one that we had to
I
kind
will
of
have the
restrict more
best people,
than the
the
other.
best and
You know, I mean,
brightest in this country,
I don't
whatever
want the
age
government
they
making those
are,
decisions for me, for sure.
advising me. We will be probably many of the people on this stage included. That's how I built my companies. I want to be challenged.
So is anybody going to
I want
mention the
people who
domestic
disagree
spy
with me.
apparatus when they
That's
bring
what
up
makes
TikTok?
America
Are we going to talk
great,
about
because we're not
TikTok, but it's
a
okay for the
perfect
federal
nation.
government to spy on
We're
everybody?
founded on the
It's
pursuit
okay
of
for Google and
perfection.
Facebook.
That is what makes
and
America
the former
great.
Twitter.
And that is why we will end it
Look,
once we
I
win this
work in
election.
IT. If you have any device that you can't take the battery out of, the government knows where you are and what you're doing at every single point in your
social
life.
media apps that we could
That's
have.
why I don't
Hold
got
on,
an
hold on. Nikki's going to
Honestly,
go.
every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say because I can't
Told you.
believe that here we
Wow.
have a TikTok
She's
situation.
really clawing
What
to
they're
dominate
doing
this
is
one.
These 150 million
This Indian
people
on
on
Indian
TikTok.
violence
That
is
means
out of
they can
control.
get your contacts, they can get your financial information, they can get your emails, they can
Let me
get
just say,
text messages, they can get all of
this
these
is
things.
important. This is
China
very important
knows
for our party.
exactly what they're
This
doing.
is
Somebody in
very
her team
important.
educated her
You've
well
gone
about
and you've helped
the voter
China
thing.
make medicines in
People
China,
tend to
not
listen.
America.
People
You
tend to
allow
listen
a lot
about
of
parental
kids to go
issues
and get on
from
the social
female
media
candidates
that's
more than they do
dangerous
from male
for all of
candidates.
us.
It's just kind of a
You went and you were in
psychological thing.
business
For
with the
somebody in her
Chinese that
camp
gave
prepared her.
$105 million.
When this comes
We
up, you need to
can't
hit this
trust you.
hard.
We
So
can't trust you.
let me
We
say
can't
Fun
something.
have
fact, all the
TikTok and
precursors
Facebook
for
because
every
we
drug
need to
Americans
ban
take is made in India or China. China.
Oh, wow.
Excuse me.
This is going to make the highlight reel here in a second.
15
Yeah.
seconds, Mr. Ramaswamy.
I think we would be better served as a Republican Party if we're not sitting here hurling personal insults and actually have a legitimate debate about policy following Reagan's 11th Commandment in his honor. And the answer is that is what actually makes our country strong. And I believe in these people. These are good people on the stage.
Oh my God.
They disagree, but let's have a legitimate disagreement. That's what I would say.
That was.
Stuart, can we get back to the question?
No,
The
we
question was
cannot.
on
Governor
technology.
DeSantis,
There's
I'm
one
going
person
straight.
on this stage
Sir,
that has a
we
career in
will have to
technology.
cut your mic, and I don't want to do that. I don't. So
Well, you let
Governor
everybody else
DeSantis, let me
talk.
go to you. Experts say President Putin has ordered assassinations across Europe, cheated on arms control treaties with the U.S., and seeks to work with China to force our decline. President Reagan believed that if you want to prevent a war, you better be prepared to fight one. Today, the Republican Party is at odds over aid to Ukraine. The price tag so far is $76 billion. But is it in our best interest to degrade Russia's military for less than 5% of what we pay annually on defense, especially when there are no U.S. soldiers in the fight?
It's
It worked in Iraq.
to end this war, and that's what I will do as president. We are not going to have a blank check. We will not have U.S. troops, and we're going to make the Europeans do what they need to do. But they've sent money to pay bureaucrats' pensions and salaries and funding small businesses halfway around the world. Meanwhile, our own country is being invaded. We don't even have control of our own territory. We have got to defend the American people before we even worry about all these other things. And I watch these guys in Washington, D.C., and they don't care about the American people. They don't care about the fentanyl deaths. They don't care about the communities
Exactly,
being
Steve.
overrun because of this border. They don't care about the Mexican
Let's see
drug
if anyone's brave enough to call it
cartels. So as
out and
Commander-in-Chief, I will defend this country's sovereignty.
But it's not a territorial dispute. It's never been a territorial dispute.
And 90% of the resources that we send over to Ukraine is guaranteed as a loan. It is not.
Of course it's a loan
90%
because the IMF, BlackRock, Vanguard, we got everything. It all comes back to central bank, people. Endless printing needs
90%
endless
of the money
war.
that we send over there is actually in the form of a loan. It's not actually not.
He's on their
because of
payroll,
Ukraine, it's paid by the
clearly.
NATO
Clearly.
allies.
So I think it's a
Number
good
one. Number two,
topic.
I
It's a
think
good
it's a really
topic.
good topic.
Champion
I
for
would say
Ukraine.
let's debate the fact that our national vital interest is in degrading the Russian military.
Why?
By degrading
Why?
the Russian
That's
military,
bullshit.
we actually keep our
Why?
homeland safer.
I mean,
we keep
that's
our
exactly
troops
what
at
the
home,
U.S. did to
and
Iraq
we
from
all understand Article
1991.
5 of NATO.
That's
We're
what
not going
Afghanistan
to-
did to us for
Something
20
about waiting
years.
until you're
Yeah.
trying to talk. So, hold on. So at the end of the day, I'm going to finish my. I'll be happy to
Go
debate
ahead, and then
this.
I'll respond.
I'll look forward to this one right now. So at the end of the day, when you think about the fact that if you want to keep American troops at home, the attack on NATO territory would bring us and our troops in. By
Yeah, I knew someone was
degrading
going to bring it.
the
It's going to be
Russian
worse if we
military,
don't
we
do it.
reduce,
Argument.
if not eliminate, an attack on
If I
NATO
may
territory.
finish that exchange, we have to level with the American people. We have to level with the American people on this issue.
Wow,
The
that was
reality is
good.
just because Putin is not Putin's an evil dictator does not mean that Ukraine is good. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties.
A win
that has
for
actually,
Russia is a
that
win
is not
for
true.
China.
We're driving
a win
Russia.
for Russia
Excuse
is a
me.
win for China.
Excuse me. And if you
But
have a
I
chance,
forgot you like
you'll
China.
have-
That's
nope,
why
you-
you're
you'll
okay.
have your chance in just a moment.
Yeah.
The hurling
If
personal insults
Vivek
isn't
really wanted
helping.
to get her right
China
now,
is the
he'd say,
real
do you want me to
enemy,
go
and
ahead and
we're
get you your
driving
swastika
Russia
from the
further
Azov
with China's
Battalion?
arms.
Do you want to wear it out here or do you want to wear it
Reasonable, peaceful plan
backstage?
to end this, especially this is a country whose president just last week
Vivek,
was
if
hailing
you let
Yell at the dog out.
have Ukraine, that's a green light to China to take Taiwan.
We need a
Peace
reasonable
comes
plan
through strength.
We need a reasonable plan to
This
peace.
reminds me of
China's the
the
real enemy.
debate between Biden
Okay,
and
so
Trump.
so Marcus, I think that this noise is intentional. They don't want anybody to have a good point on this matter.
No, nobody. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
the
wanna
powers
cut
that
them off
shouldn't
at the
be
pass.
benefit from this too much to keep going. They don't want a clear-cut answer on this.
No, they're all connected, Stuart. They're all connected.
He just said New
Chinese
World
are
Order.
paying for the.
I wanna
Russian
hear
war
what
in
Kristi
Ukraine.
Kreem has
The
to
Iranians
say.
are supplying more sophisticated weapons, and so are the North Koreans now as well, with the encouragement of the
right.
Chinese. The naivete on this stage from some of these folks is extraordinary. Look,
Exactly
I understand
scientific.
people want to
Yes.
go and talk to Putin. Guess what? So did George W. Bush. So did Barack Obama. So did Donald Trump. And so did Joe Biden when he said a small invasion wouldn't be so bad. Every one of them has been wrong. And the fact of the matter is, we need to say right now that the Chinese-Russian alliance is something we have to fight against, and we are not going to solve it by going over and cuddling up to Vladimir Putin. Look, Donald Trump said Vladimir Putin was brilliant and a great leader. This is the person who is murdering people in his own country, and now not having enough blood, he's now going to Ukraine to murder innocent civilians and kidnap 20,000 children. And let me tell you, if you think that's where it's going to stop, if we give him any of Ukraine,
20,000 children have gone missing, and if not more than that, but it's not the Russians taking them.
This is a guy in 1991 who said that was the darkest moment in world history when the Soviet Union fell. Listen, everybody, he wants to put the old band back together, and only America can stop it. And when I'm president, we will.
Governor Burgum, I want to get to Governor Burgum. He
That
has a
plays
chance.
well
I
with
have a
Reagan.
question I think you're going to really like. Or
The
at least
boomers
you
love that
have
one.
experience in it. And we need to talk about America's farmers because there is a foreign policy connection here. The U.S. and China are in this fierce economic competition. It's hurting American businesses. And
Let's see how they
there is
dress
blowback
ags. This will be
against
interesting.
American farmers because China then targets them in retaliation. How would you, as president, protect American farmers and ranchers from that kind of retaliation from a foreign government like China?
Well, first of all, we've got the best farmers and ranchers in the world right here in America. If they have a level playing field, they can outcompete anyone in the world. But this is part of the larger issue that we're talking about here, which is we're in a Cold War with China. The Biden administration won't admit
Exactly,
that. We're
Lucy.
also
That's
in
an
a
inconvenient
economic
fact they don't
war
want to talk
through
about, right?
What we're doing with agriculture and
The
energy.
single most
and we're also in a
corrupt
war
country in Eastern
with them
Europe,
relative to
the
cyber
hub
war. We
of
get
child sex
attacked every
trafficking,
day. North
top
Dakota,
one
every
for over
state,
20 years.
every
Yeah, they don't
school
want to talk
district,
about
our
that.
tribes all being attacked every day by either China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea. And now we've got a Biden administration whose whole policy is appeasement.
And see,
They're
Marcus,
out
this
there,
is why
you
they
know,
don't have
creating the world,
libertarians on
making it less
stage.
safe. $6
Because a
billion
libertarian would be able to
they
take
created
this
for
ag
5
question,
people.
they
They've
could
just now
take the
set a
China-Russia
price
question,
on
and
anyone's
they could
head
say
who's
it
a
simply
tourist
like,
from
hey, you know
America,
what?
who's
You
a
know how you
student from
prevent
America
war with
for
everybody?
kidnapping.
Everybody's
If you
trading
want more
among everybody.
kidnapping, put a price
You
on
don't
it.
want to kill
And
your
then
best
that's- And they're
customer.
also helping
That's
Iran
right.
get to have more
That's right, yeah.
closer to nuclear weapon, which pushes
If,
all of the
if
Middle
you're
East
buying from me
closer
and
to
I'm
China
buying
and
from
Russia.
you,
The
we're
whole
going to
thing
be
is
okay.
absurd. And then, of course,
If
we're going to
Doug
give
didn't say
Ukraine
that
to
law
Russia, and then
enforcement
we're going to
shit,
give
I would fuck with
Taiwan
Doug.
to China and think that's a foreign policy. That will make our nation less successful, make us more poor. And at the core of all that is energy policy, because China imports 10 million barrels of oil a day. They're the largest import in the world. And we've had 4 cabinet members from the Biden administration there this summer, and none of them talked about U.S. energy. The first one to go to each of those countries was Kerry to talk about the folly of the climate policy, which is making the world less stable. It's empowering dictators. It's not about climate change that we need worried about. It's about the Biden climate policies that are actually the existential threat to America's future.
Thank you.
That's true.
Governor
Yeah.
Haley, Mexico's president
But he
called
can't get
who
a word in
supports
edgewise.
sending U.S. military into the country, quote, scoundrels. Mexico is the United States' most important trade partner and border security. You say you will send special operations to attack the cartels in Mexico. So this means boots on the ground, drone strikes.
It means special operations. It's how we deal with our terrorists. And what you need to do is
So,
understand
Nikki,
that
what
Mexico's
happens
not
when you
being a
do
good
that
partner
is
if
they
we
just
lost
start moving the
75,000
operations
Americans
domestically.
last year.
Because you
Mexico's
won't
not being a
drone
good
strike
partner
the
if they're
suburbs
letting the
of
cartels get
Dallas,
away with what they're
Texas.
getting away with.
Well, they
What we
did
will
blow
do
up
is we will make sure
Philadelphia
that we
or
send in
They're
our
not going to
special
stop doing their.
operations, and we will take
Just
out
cut the profit motive
cartels,
off,
we'll
Nikki.
take
It's a
out
lot
their
easier.
operations,
Nobody
we'll
has
take
to
out
die.
any that's
Yeah.
doing it, but we're going to
The
go
war on
after
drugs is the
China
problem.
because China is the one sending the fentanyl in the first place.
That is
And we
true.
will end all normal trade relations until China stops sending fentanyl.
That can happen.
And then we'll do the special
They'll
operations
just
and
start
we'll get it from
manufacturing
both sides.
domestic.
You're not
President
shutting
Trump went wrong.
down trade with
Focused on
China.
trade with China.
No,
He didn't
you
focus on
can't.
the fact that they were buying up our farmland. He didn't focus on the fact that they
Every
were killing
poor
Americans. He
person
didn't
here
focus on the
depends
fact
on
that they
the
were
cheap
stealing
crap they
$600
send
billion
Yeah, 100%
in intellectual
on cheap
property.
China
He
products.
didn't focus on the fact that they put a spy base off our shores in Cuba. They didn't focus enough on the fact that all of our law enforcement drones in America are Chinese, and we've got all these little surveillance cells. We need to start focusing on what keeps Americans safe. That hasn't happened in a long time. As your president, I will make sure every American is safe, and we'll do whatever it takes to make that happen.
All
You
right.
won't do that.
I want to get to Senator
That's
Sparks.
I
No,
think
it
that's
won't
called
happen.
tyranny.
You just give the
You're
federal
all
government.
auditioning for the job as president of the United States. You want to earn these votes. But the world's problems land in the Oval Office. During the presidential debates in the year 2000, Neither Al Gore nor George W. Bush was asked about Al Qaeda.
Right.
Yet, just 1 year later, Al Qaeda's attack on September 11th claimed nearly 3,000 lives. And the farther we get from September 11th, the closer we are to September 10th.
Exactly,
Senator
scientific.
Scott, you have no executive branch experience. What has prepared
We're the
you
only
to
people that ever used
protect
nuke.
the nation from a major man-made national security crisis?
One of the things I've had the good fortune of
Whoa,
doing is
thanks.
serving on committees in the United States Senate, like the Senate Armed Services Committee. I'm on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, also on the Finance Committee and the Banking Committee. Talk about addressing the
I'm in
issue of
bed with the
fentanyl.
military-industrial
I've written the
complex.
legislation,
That's what he just
passed it
said.
through the Banking Committee and the Senate.
Did they
to freeze the
say
assets
September
and
11th,
sanction the
September
accounts
10th?
of the Mexican cartels. There are weapons that we have
don't
within
know.
the arsenal that I was able to get past 23 to
The
0
question, something
in the
about September.
polarizing Senate as it is.
Sorry.
I also understood without question the fact that if you look at the details before 9/11, there was information and intelligence that was available.
Yeah, claim
that
it's a gas
suggested
leak. Yeah,
an
you know,
attack
that's all
was
that.
coming. Having the right intelligence partners with us is key to making sure that we prevent the next 9/11 from ever happening. Having that experience for the last 10 years is really important in getting the job done.
There's 30 seconds to you, Mr. Pence.
Well, I think you asked a question about executive experience, and I think it's vitally important. And I stand before you today as a candidate for president because I think this country's in a lot of trouble.
Here comes the neocon answer. Here we
You
go.
hear the fire on the stage tonight. You hear the fire in all of our voices. And it's because Joe Biden has weakened this country at home and abroad. This is a time for those of us that have the experience, the tested experience, and a commitment
like
to the
a
conservative
big
agenda
piece of
that
cod
Ronald
with no
Reagan brought
seasoning.
forward in this party of a strong national defense, standing with our allies, standing up to our enemies, supporting limited government and traditional values.
Limited
Step
government.
forward.
Okay.
Understood.
Because frankly, our party does face a time for choosing, as I said at the top of this debate, whether we're going to stand on the foundation of that conservative agenda that Ronald Reagan poured, or whether we're going to follow the siren song of populism unmoored to conservative
And now it
principles.
is a
I'm
time
the most
for-
experienced, most qualified, and most consistent conservative in this field, and I'm ready to lead
All right.
America at
It is
home and
now
abroad on day
a
one.
time for choosing to go to a break. Ilya.
We need to go to a commercial break where Reagan built a
Hey,
coalition
commercial
that
break.
lasted
We get a
a
dog. All right.
Did you mute it?
Someone take it from the top.
Was that you muting them,
Hey.
Marcus?
I muted all of that shit. You guys can go have at it for a minute with the Neanderthalithic European session while I step away from the microphone for a moment.
Or you got to go. You got have a biology break.
Yeah, I gotta go get my sample.
See. That's why folks listening at home.
We're gonna
I'm the only
bring
sober one on the podcast now. So you'll have
we're
me as the
gonna
anchor
bring a
here.
message from the Caucasus Mountains. That's what Marcus is saying.
Yeah, from the Caucasus. That's a great. Is that an Eddie Griffin? Isn't that like where's that from?
The mountains of Caucasus.
No, that not Eddie Griffin, but the it's in the movie. He's like, that is a Caucasian baby. He is from the Caucasus. Yeah, exactly. That baby. Yeah. That's really good. That was awesome. Yeah, man. So you're in Central Florida, right?
North Florida.
North Florida.
Northeast.
So you kind of have like you're kind of in like opiate capital, right? I mean,
Yeah.
y'all were like the pain mill clinic, weren't y'all like notorious for like all the pain pill mills and everything?
Yeah.
Kind of down there. What kind of happened, like in your experience? What happened with that? Because you saw them come into existence, go out of business. Like, walk us through it, man. What did it look like in Florida during that?
So I'll say this: the crazy part about it is in the state of Florida, after like the pain pill epidemic or oxycodone epidemic, whatever you want to call it. They did a lockdown of how long a prescription for pain meds would last. Well, what this led to is people not being able to get, government or not government funding, but like, I guess their drugs.
Legitimate, pharmaceutical opiates, and so they went to the black market, kind of.
Yeah, they basically went to the black market, and that's the
Yeah.
thing is
I
like
came back
whenever
and y'all
you
talking
make
about
more
black
government-
markets.
Yeah, we were talking about not that black market. We're talking about the drug black market, Marcus. Yeah.
When you make more government regulation and you shut down access to it, like people are going to find it on the black market. So essentially, and then so the black market boomed. You know what I mean? Like people going to the. I mean, I don't really know. Like I obviously I don't run in those circles, but the pain mill or the pill mill pain clinic boom happened because of that. Because you needed more regulation, but as long as they were paying off the right politicians, they got away with it.
Yeah.
The whole there's that docuseries, I think it's called The Pharmacist. It's on.
The thing about the opioid market was the war in Afghanistan, where the United States government allowed the opium farmers to flourish.
Yeah,
The
and for you guys at home, so you have codeine, right, from opium, and then you can get codone, and then you get hydrocodone and oxycodone. All of these come from the opium plant. They need the natural precursor. That's the easiest way to make them, is have the natural precursor, already grown from the ground and do it. So fentanyl is purely synthetic. You can mix up in a test tube, whatever. And the problem with fentanyl apparently is that it's very quick acting, right? So people that are used to like, hey, I could take a pain pill, a Percocet in the morning, and I could be good till 3 o'clock in the afternoon for my back. Now fentanyl will get me there, but it only does it till about 11 o'clock, right? So now they're dosing more, and they're doing this, and that's kind of where we are. So we got here. So anytime this thing comes up, the fentanyl thing comes up, I get floored about it, because these are the people that caused it. I mean, not them directly, but these are the people who are responsible.
The government.
That's
the
right.
Drug war.
I was like 19, 20 years old, man, when like Oxycontin like really kind of came out. And I remember like it's starting being like a recreational thing among like friends of mine, right? And I remember like taking a piece of an Oxycontin one time when I was like 20, and I was like, there's no way this is not addictive. Like there's no way that anybody took this and actually said this is not addictive. Yeah. Right? I mean, I knew right then this was complete bullshit.
It was a big government cover up.
Yeah. And they were telling this to people left and right, and doctors were parroting it. So
we had a question.
Here we go. We got Vivek back. What's he saying?
Hold on one second.
Natural resources here at home. But here's the other thing that we can do that's easy.
Forever, Mr. Ramaswamy.
And it addresses the national debt as well as brings down prices.
Okay.
Put people back to work. We are using taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home than to go to work.
Not
that
really
is wrong.
anymore.
That contributes to our supply chain crisis. It contributes to
Honestly,
inflation. That's the easiest way to unlock this economy. Here's the other thing. We have to put the Federal Reserve back in its place. This is an agency that has gone rogue. So in January 2026,
they're not an agency, Vivek.
when I have the opportunity as their next commander-in-chief, we will have a new chairman of the Federal Reserve who places priority on dollar stability.
They're not an
And then
agency.
most importantly,
They're a
send packing
private corporation.
75% of the administrative state. Reduce
can't
the
do
federal
nothing.
employee headcount by 75%. Rescind 50% of unconstitutional federal regulations that are shackling businesses.
You
both
go ahead and cut his
large
audio
and
real quick.
small.
I want to
I've
interject
offered
with a
very
fact
clear,
here for the
practical
audience
plan
at
to do
home.
it. That's how
Anybody
we-
can go look this up. You can get rid of every single discretionary item in the federal budget. Every single discretionary item except for
Every
defense.
single one. Yeah,
every single
okay.
one of them except for defense, and you would still run about a $650 billion deficit. So every single one of those things, if you do not touch one of the big three, Social Security, Medicare, or defense, or you grow the economy a significant amount of the next decade, you cannot solve it all. This is lip service. That's all I just wanted to say.
Boom. Send it.
I don't really mind muting Mike Pence at this point, because he's a white-haired piece of shit.
Hold on. But look, he's doing. This is going to be where the neocon answer comes again. He's going to I want to hear the mayonnaise sandwich answer.
I can hear him right now. It's all bullshit. Here you go.
We're going to open up federal lands. We're going to unleash American energy. We're going to
Unleash.
all of
More
the above
government.
energy strategy. And I have a plan that actually would not only reclaim energy independence, but in 2006, America lost our position as the leading energy producer on earth. I believe in the next 10 years, with the right policies and experienced leadership in the White House, we can reclaim our role as the leading energy producer on earth, and that'll grow the American economy for generations to come.
So let me ask either of you: have you ever got some Sprite
Could I answer the
and it was no syrup, just the
So,
carbonated
the first thing
water?
I'll say is
Yeah.
what I saw
Yeah.
at the
That's Mike
United
Pence.
Nations is
Yeah.
national energy security is national security.
All
Hold
fizz,
on.
no
The
So
flavor.
president
Nikki Haley
understands
was strong
we
on
have
this
to
answer in the
partner
first
with our
debate. Let's see how she
producers
does
and
this
make
time.
sure that we have their backs. What you don't need is a president who is against energy independence. Ron DeSantis is against fracking. He's against drilling. He's been against. You did it. He always talks
In
about what
his
happens
state,
on day
he
one.
did do
You
it.
better watch out because what happens on day two is when you're in trouble. Day two in Florida, you banned fracking, you banned offshore drilling, you did it on federal lands, and you took green subsidies that you didn't have to
It's
take.
true. Good
Hey,
attack.
man,
You were
It is
mentioning
true.
yeah,
Look at
that-
day two.
We have a
wasn't
Florida
even a
expert on the
lead-up.
I just
podcast.
did a
People, he's saying
plan
it's
out
true.
in West Texas for American energy dominance. We're going to choose Midland over Moscow. We're going to choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs, and we're going to choose Bakken over Beijing, and we are going to lower your gas prices. We are going to get that job done because it's important for our national security. It's important for jobs.
We
and
need
that's
to
one of the
increase
best
refining
ways
capacity.
to drive down inflation.
I think
Good
he missed this
recovery.
part.
Ban fracking, you ban
Governor
offshore
Santos,
drilling.
So he did ban it because
This
we're
question is for you.
on an
Our
aquifer.
voters enacted a constitutional
You
amendment
banned it before
that
they
doesn't
voted.
allow. No, it's not true.
You
They-
banned it before
No,
they voted, and
Nikki,
not
you're-
only that,
You're not.
fracking
You're not.
wasn't.
You're,
They didn't
she's
vote on
just totally
fracking.
wrong. They voted it
Check
in.
it.
That's
Check
what we
it.
did. Onshore, we do it in Florida. We don't have as much as maybe West Texas, but we do it. But that was the Constitution. So that's just wrong. And let's just get real here. My plan will get the job done.
You
We are
banned
going to
it
be
before
energy
the
dominant,
voters
and that's
even
what's going to
voted,
happen.
and the voters didn't even vote
I'm
on
glad
fracking.
she's
You
calling him
banned
out.
We are
fracking.
moving on with this question for Governor DeSantis. Governor,
As the only leader of an
excuse me,
energy
we
Yeah,
cannot
shut the
talk
fuck
over each
up.
other. We must respect each other's
That's
time.
ridiculous.
My apologies for that.
I'm ready, Stuart.
Governor
Let's do it.
DeSantis, this is your question. The Biden administration is hell-bent on student loan forgiveness, but you say colleges should be on the hook when graduates cannot pay their debt. How does that address the cost of college? The cost of college itself?
Because the colleges are going to have to make a decision. Do we expand the gender studies department, knowing some of those graduates
Not yet,
may
I don't
not have
believe.
great
We had it
learning opportunities?
passed
No.
over briefly
They're going to
scientific.
focus on the things that really matter. They're going to make different choices. They're going to try to graduate people in 4 years. I also just want to come back to something Dana asked last segment about 9/11, because I was just at the 9/11 memorial with the families. My wife and I were invited. It's very touching to be there, and
Right,
it affected
Steve.
my life
I mean,
because
that's
I ended up joining the military.
So
as a
Steve
result
brought up
of
good,
that.
Steve brings up a good
I've
point
been
with
a
the
blue-collar
UAE,
kid, minimum
with
wage
Dubai
in
and
Dunedin,
BRICS.
Florida.
You know,
I ended up getting
if
through
the U.S.
Yale and
wants to
Harvard Law School
reaffirm,
and
you
somehow
know,
came
a
out more
quote-unquote
conservative
petrodollar
than when I went
regime,
in, and that is
we
not
got
easy
about
to do.
18
Had a
years
lot
of
of
stuff to take
opportunities
back,
to make
and I just
money,
don't
but
think
I
it's going to
wanted
get
to
there.
serve, and I'll never
The
forget coming back on
establishment
the plane
wants
from
him
Iraq,
so bad.
landing
do.
in Coronado, California, North Island, and feeling that breeze off the Pacific Ocean and say, you know what? I am lucky to have been born an American. And I think being able to serve, and I'll be the first president elected since 1988 who's actually served overseas in a war. I think that's going to help me as commander in chief.
He was a lawyer.
To know how
Yeah,
you
he was a
serve
JAG
your
officer.
country.
what
You never
combat-
learned
Hey
to
man,
talk.
that's still that counts.
wear
I'm gonna
people.
I'm gonna I'm gonna let it technically count, Marcus.
Right now,
Well,
and
hey,
we're
we're
gonna
going to
make
help
it
you
for
during the
them.
briefing.
Senator
Do
Scott,
not
national
engage
debt is
anybody
nearly
that
doubled
doesn't
in
have
your
an
time in
weapon.
office. The
Mike,
approval rate
are
for
you
Congress is
giving
over
Fobbit
19%.
this.
a chance here?
If this were a business,
Dude was
probably
a
all be
Fobbit.
fired and
Never
By the way, I've
We're
noticed
here tonight
there's a
looking
cute
for a
chick in the
promotion.
background over here.
In
Do y'all seen her?
2013,
over
Governor
there?
Haley hired you
No,
for this.
I'm not allowed to
I'd
look
like
at
you
that.
to tell her why you should be promoted to CEO of the nation instead of her.
Certainly. One of the things I'd say is if you look at our national debt of $33 trillion, I would love to have an opportunity to have this country pass a balanced budget amendment. That would constrain the
Not good enough.
spending in Washington in the same fashion that it does in every state in our nation. Number one. Number two,
we use
if you
those
wanna
three words
actually
all the
reduce
time.
our national debt, you have to grow our economy. In order to grow our economy, you need to create about 10 million jobs to grow our economy at 5%. You can do that
Per
in
year for a
three
decade. He's
specific
on
sectors.
something.
Number
He knows
one,
he's talking
we
facts here.
could create between 3 and 3.5 million jobs if we unleashed all of our energy resources. America is we're the richest country if you combine coal, gas, and oil. Why not unleash all of our resources? Number two, we've lost
Nuclear, he didn't mention
100,000
nuclear.
factories. 100,000 factories in the last 25 years.
Hold on.
If we
He has an
continued on our
opportunity.
Made in America plan, we could bring jobs back to America in a similar fashion that we did when I wrote the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We actually lowered the corporate tax from 35%
That was his chance to
21%.
mention nuclear,
We lowered
Eric.
our rebate
It's,
rate
you know,
from
building a
$1.7
grid that
We
is
brought the
compatible with
unemployment rates for
industrialization.
African
You know,
Americans,
you have too
Hispanics,
cheap to
and
meter
Asians
electricity in the
to
United States.
lowest
You'll have
level
factories
in
back
the
here again.
history
Trust
of
me.
the country
Yeah.
in a
You know, if
70-year
you put
labor
factories
agreement.
back
Governor
in inner
Haley, would
cities,
you
that
think
would
you think
solve
you would
a shit
So
ton
many
of
problems,
problems.
yes.
Look, I
Shit ton.
appreciate Tim. We've known each other a long time, but he's been there 12 years and he hasn't done any of that. He hasn't. They've only given 4 budgets on time in 40 years. He started that. He increased the national debt. He voted for the spending.
You voted
He has
for,
made sure that the
you
borders are
actually
open and
asked
they
for a
haven't done
gas
anything.
tax
Look at
increase
everything
in
that's
South
happened
Carolina.
in 12 years. Where have
Yeah,
you
Lucy,
been?
another
Where-
uncomfortable fact, right? If you notice, these things don't get brought up in this debate. You know, they've missed a number of things. Notice, I think that it was intentional that Vivek called the Federal Reserve an agency. Well, you're not going to talk about the Ukraine situation, honestly. You're not going to talk about the DOD failing audits.
And has delivered big victories
This
for the
is
people
true
of
by
Florida.
because
And
West
that's what it's all
Africa
about.
has
You
barely
can always
capped their
talk, but
resources.
when it gets hot in
But the
there,
reason that
when they're
Africa does so
shooting
poorly
arrows
is,
at
again, they
you,
don't have
are you
access
gonna
to
be
cheap
stand
energy on the
up for
grid.
parents' rights,
They have tons of
people's
natural
state free? Are
resources,
you
tons
gonna
of
be able
people,
to do
but they
all
do
those
very
things
poorly
in the
because they
state
have
of Florida
no access to good
because of our
energy.
success?
Akon's
The
fixing
Democratic
that.
Party lies
The
in
fact that
ruins.
the
We have
Berlin
won the
Conference
big
has them
fights.
still
We have
owing
turned our
money
state
to
into a
European
Republican
countries.
state.
Yeah, the
People
IMF got 'em by the
respond to
balls, man.
leadership.
Yeah, that's just
I've done it
absolutely
while
ridiculous.
others have talked about it.
CEO, we actually have a CEO in the White House, which is what I think we
This
need.
is a circus.
I don't
This
know
is shit
what
show.
they're saying,
We
and I
need
love it.
zero-based budgeting. That's
Hold on.
the way
Hold on.
businesses
Hold on.
actually run. Start with zero as the baseline for the budget,
Yes.
and then see what's actually necessary.
That goes
There
for
isn't a
America
blue
too.
state
That's
or
better
red
than a
state in
balanced
this
budget.
union that does it. The federal government doesn't do it, but successful companies, including the ones that I've built as a CEO, will do it. And I think we need a CEO in the White House to get that done.
Governor Burgum runs a
Have y'all noticed again?
Yes,
Any of
go
these
ahead.
serious
That's the
questions
only guy that's gonna
becomes
attack you.
a
Energy
noise
questions,
fest?
You don't ask anything,
Yeah.
but I'm just going to say right now.
Every serious
when you say
question
nobody
gets
else has done
deflected
it,
to
the
why
energy plans that have all been
somebody
announced
else
in the
is
last month
wrong
by these other
and
Because they
somebody
don't want to
else-
actually have
North
the
Dakota.
that nobody
don't
really
believe
has a
it.
I'm
fucking
sorry, talking
answer
about-
here.
We've got troops down at the border flying helicopter missions from North Dakota, from San Diego to the Gulf Coast, trying to stop transnational criminal organizations from inflicting the invasion and the mass casualties in our state. And on the energy policy, we're already doing it. And it's not saying when nobody else done the big fights, North Dakota was leading the charge. We won the battle to get the Biden administration, who was ignoring
North
the law.
Dakota
They were
only
the first
worries about
administration
snow
since Truman
Mexicans.
that wasn't holding the quarterly required lease sales, and we won that in federal court. WOTUS, we won that in federal court. We're fighting the Biden administration on 20 fronts. To say that nobody's fighting the big fights, just look at the record of what we're doing right now. Energy, economy, national security, I've been talking about it since day one, and now finally
I'll
good,
tell you
we're
this:
having
if
the
you want
conversation
somebody
about it,
who's
but
going to
we've
be
got the
good
answer in North
on
Dakota.
petroleum
Governor Burgum,
energy
let's talk big
in
government.
America, find a
This
governor of
budget's
one of the
for
states
you.
that has significant amounts of
Big government
federal
keeps
land,
getting bigger.
because they have dealt with the
1/5
bureaucracy
all
of
new
land leasing.
jobs
So
this
yeah.
year have been created by the government. Governor Burgum, you say you want to shrink the size of government, but it has been a century since any president has done that. Why would you be
You hear
any
that,
different?
folks? It's been a century.
Calvin Coolidge.
We've
That's
done
right.
it in North
Good old
Dakota.
Calvin.
When I took office, we shrunk the state budget general fund by 27% in the first 4 months I was office, and all the trains still running on time. Why? Because you had a business leader that was actually there. Inside of every government job, there's 10 or 20% of mind-numbing, soul-sucking work that even the state and federal employees don't want to do, and you can engineer that work out of the job. That would free up right there 20% of 2
You're right,
million
Steve, this is
civilian
not.
employees. And by the way, we've got 10 million jobs open. They'd have plenty to do, and they could be in.
And again, they're trying to keep
generating
anybody
taxes
from
instead of
waking
being
up,
paid
which is
by
why the real
taxes.
questions
This
become
is
these
totally
shout
possible
fests.
to do it if you have somebody that understands. Because having worked in technology
This is
for
the
30
worst
years, everything
episode
we
of
had
Fear
to do was
Factor
to be
I've
better,
ever watched.
faster, and cheaper the next day. That's what we can do in government. That's what we're doing in North Dakota.
All right, Governor DeSantis.
That man's got some
Coolidge.
serious
I wanna ask you about
eyebrows, though.
something that I think
You know
is
what I'm
on a
saying?
lot
Like,
of
you got some
Republicans'
serious
minds.
eyebrows.
This election
Like-
could come down to less than 50,000
Every
votes
time he
in
looks at the
3
camera, like, man,
states.
there's like
Abortion
critters
was
on
on
his.
the 22.
We're actually coming down to the last
Republicans lost all
15
of them.
minutes of this, and I'm less than
Next year,
impressed.
abortion will likely be on the ballot in Arizona.
Look at
That's
his
a must-win
poop
state.
Hold on, we're gonna drop the
Governor
A bomb
DeSantis,
here, guys.
How are
Hold
you
on.
going to win over over independent, pro-choice voters in Arizona?
Same way we did in Florida. We won the greatest Republican victory in a governor's race in the history of the state, over 1.5 million votes. We were winning places like Miami-Dade County, Palm Beach, that nobody thought was possible because we were leading with purpose and conviction. I reject this idea that pro-lifers are to blame for midterm defeats. I think there's other reasons for that. The former president, he's missing in action tonight. He's had a lot to say about that. He should be here explaining his comments.
He did. He said on
trying to
social.
say that pro-life protections are somehow a terrible thing. I want him to look into the eyes and tell people who've been fighting this fight for a long time. My wife and I earlier today were at the gravesite of President and Mrs. Reagan, and I noticed that there was a quote where it says, "Every single person has purpose and worth." We're better off when everybody counts. And I think we should stand for what we believe in. I think we should hold the Democrats accountable for their extremism, supporting abortion all the way up until the moment of birth. That is infanticide, and that is
where he
wrong.
fell. That's where he fell right there.
Hold on.
Governor Christie, do you think that Republicans?
Yes, I will.
Okay, Governor Christie, do you think that Republicans can do that in Arizona if this referendum is on the ballot there?
Yeah, because I did it in New Jersey, Dana.
So the transgender question
Then why are all these
had
other states
people go
losing?
individually,
because they
and
don't
now the
have
abortion
leaders in those
question.
states who are
These are
leading
the
the
two
fight the way
ones
it
that we
should
haven't
be
had
led.
this talk
And
fest.
the fact is, look, I
The
was a governor here
culture
of the only
Culture
blue state
question.
that's
They're all
represented
gonna
up here.
agree.
This is where the fight is really tough for Republicans. And those are the states that we're going to have to try to win if we're going to win the White House back. And what we did is 14 times, Dana, in 8 years, I vetoed Planned Parenthood funding. 14 times. No one else gets it that much. The Democrats just kept sending it to me, and I kept saying no because I believe in life, but I also believe in states' rights. And I think we fought hard against Roe versus Wade for decades to say that states should make these decisions. So we're going to have those fights in the states. But what you need is a leader who can talk to people and make them understand that
The
if you're
Democrats are never
pro-life,
going to codify
you have
Roe.
to be
It's not.
pro-life for the
I
entire
mean, they had
life,
50 years
not
to do
just
it.
the 9 months
They
in the
had
womb.
plenty
And we talked a
opportunities
lot
to
about
do it.
Yeah, this
fentanyl
is-
tonight,
hey,
and we haven't
problems
spoken
are worth
one
more than
moment about
solutions.
treatment.
Yep.
But we need to make sure that for the drug-addicted 16-year-old on the floor of the county lockup, her life is precious
Oh, the
too.
drug-addicted
And we
16-year-old
need to
on
be
the floor of the
providing
county lockup.
treatment to cure this as a
Get that
disease that
meat.
it is. If you're pro-life, you got to be pro-life for
In
the
his
entire
case,
life.
cheese.
We start talking like that, they're going to do what I did in the blue state, which was get reelected with 61% of the vote and won 70% of independents and 51% of Latinos because I told them the truth.
Oh,
What is the
you went
what is
for
the
the golden
current
button.
what is the current New Jersey law on abortion? I'm gonna look that up while they're talking. Hold on.
It's
Latino
in
voters
line with
I
think
California.
the Republican Party
Oh, so it's
doesn't care
very very
about
liberal.
or is
Very
being
liberal.
hostile
Okay.
toward them. The Hispanic community.
There's New
Only
Jersey,
Governor DeSantis
new
has
solicitor
translated
general.
his
It's legal
campaign
throughout.
into
Yeah. Okay.
Spanish.
All right.
How will you reach out to Latino voters?
Oh, there's even an
Oh,
I
abortionfinder.org.
promise you that we're
Okay.
going to continue
All
to
right.
build bridges to every community in this country. And I'm incredibly proud of that tax cut and tax reform bill. I worked
Oh
on
wow,
Capitol Hill to
Marcus,
help
in
get that
New
bill
Jersey,
passed
abortion
into
is legal
law.
throughout the entire pregnancy.
Largest tax cut in American
So
history.
Chris Christie
We
didn't really
saw
want to address
literally
the pro-life issue
the
here. I
lowest
guess.
unemployment ever recorded for Hispanic Americans.
That's right,
The lowest
exactly, Lucid,
unemployment
yeah.
ever recorded for African
what I was getting
Americans.
He's going to say, "I
50-year
stand for
low
life, but we're going to
for
kill
women.
people who sell fentanyl."
So I think the
We're gonna
president of the
just
United
shoot him in the
States needs
head.
to be a
Yeah.
champion
Yeah.
for the
I
Because that's what
appreciate
Jesus
the
would
comment.
do.
Because
Yeah.
I love
It
the
begins
Boondocks.
with
Kill people in the Middle East.
engaging and being firm.
We know scientific. Yeah.
Begins with every ethnic group in this country. And I promise you, if I'm president of the United States, I'll be a champion. I'll be a champion for the American dream, for Hispanic Americans, and for every American. So help me
Okay,
God.
so the truth is that none of these people are taking hardline stances on this. This is a complete departure from the first debate.
Example,
They're
it's the best way to
playing
get
Hold
the
on.
job
sides of the
done.
road.
If you look at my
Well,
office in the Senate,
As much as I don't like
my
Christie, he's
chief
doing
of
better in
staff is the
pants.
only Hispanic
He is.
female chief of staff in the Senate. I hired her because she was the best, highest qualified person we have. What we need are leaders who lead by example.
He
And
lying.
No one
He
has
loves
answered
it.
the
I would love
question.
to finish my
Black men
conversation
love
with Nikki
Latinas.
as it
He
relates to
lying.
No
the
one
job
has
that
answered
needs to
the
get done.
question.
Nikki offered a
They won't do
10%, 10-cent gas tax increase in South Carolina. Talk about someone who has never seen a federal dollar.
Oh,
she
Nikki's
doesn't
getting ready.
like.
She's winding
10
up, y'all.
cents
You can
on
see
this
it.
Gallon in South Carolina.
They're going
As
to
the
soft pitch win
UN
this to
ambassador,
her.
I just want to
you
put this out there that
Bring it.
Nikki has a black son-in-law.
Hold on.
on curtains and a $15 million subsidized location.
Next.
You got bad information. First of all, I fought the gas tax in South Carolina multiple times against the establishment.
Just go to YouTube.
Against the establishment.
Just go to
and
YouTube
you want
and
to know
see
what
for
that
yourself.
10 cent was? When they wouldn't pass the gas tax, the establishment and the companies wanted me to do it so much that I said the only way I will
Here's
pass
what you
it
have to
if
do.
you will
All you
give
have
us
to do.
three.
All you
excuse
have
me,
to do is go
if you will
watch
give-
Nikki Haley on
Let him
YouTube.
finish.
Yes.
If you will give me 3 times the deduction in income tax, then I will look at your gas
So you
tax,
said
which
yes,
is why it didn't
you would
happen.
pass.
Secondly,
Exactly, Ron.
secondly, on the 50 million.
Here is a nice part.
Secondly, on the curtains, do your
Yes.
homework, Tim, because Obama bought those curtains.
Did you
and
send them back?
It's in the
Did you
press.
send them back?
It's the State Department.
Did you send them back?
you send them back? You're the one that works in Congress.
Oh my gosh.
They were there before
Big
I even
burn.
showed up at the residence.
That was a twist of the knife.
That was good, man. That was mental judo right there.
Here's a fact. Here's a fact.
She got him on that one.
Look at Vivek.
Hey, nice
He's
home
like,
run.
I wanna. I was never involved.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do not intend to go ahead like this. In fact, we're about to take a
8 minutes left in this
No
debate.
commercial break, good.
We got one debate. They're going to ask the wrap-up question.
from the Reagan Presidential Library in just a few moments.
All right.
All right. So Nikki might have, Nikki
Hey guys,
Nikki
real
scored one
quick,
there.
I've been drinking these all night. I wanted to throw it up for some a local brewery here in Jacksonville.
All right, call them out, man.
This is Oktoberfest from the Veterans United Brewing.
Bring it up to the camera a little bit. I want to see the label, man. Turn it this way. Okay, cool. Little retro cartoon on it. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm
It's a little
digging it.
bright, but yeah.
What's the
hosted
ABV on one of
several
those bad
events in that
boys?
brewery during my campaign, so I just want to throw it up to them. I've been drinking these all night, waiting for the opportunity. They're not paying me for it. I only drink local craft beer, but this might be the kind of thing where we can get this podcast on that level. You know what I mean? Get us some local
Yeah,
sponsors.
I want to thank the Common Arms Trade Company as well down there in Florida with you. Because
Florida man.
This is a heavy Florida podcast, isn't it?
Yeah,
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Do y'all
And
see
that's
this
why we
truck
need to
real
get-
quick?
Huh?
It's got a 50 cal round through it. Y'all see that?
There you go, man.
Oh.
I was wondering what that was, dude. I was like,
Yeah.
is that like does it I was
That's
like, is that
pretty
like a
special.
bong, like a pipe at the same time? I was like, was that what it was? Yeah.
It's pushed through the glass.
Okay,
Which is
so
better,
Eric, what is
or-
the ABV on Oktoberfest from those people? What is
All
it?
right, so this one is a 5.1%.
All right, okay, all right.
That's
I'm
pretty.
on my
That's
fourth
Is
pretty
it? Hey, just it's right there, man. You know,
pretty chill.
it's right there. It's right there. Yeah, that so Nikki was able to kind of get a point on that one right there. Notice no one's going to remember the State Department thing. I think few people will look up on YouTube anything about the taxes. She deflected that one really well. So everything else was kind of just bland. But yeah, Marcus, so when we looked up the abortion thing, yeah, New Jersey, there's no limit. It's an abortion all the way up to day of a birth. I mean, so yeah, he did not want to address that kind of that issue. I mean, with that.
Not
That
at
brew
all.
won't grow hair on your chest.
Wait.
Sorry.
No, that thing with New Jersey and California are on equal levels as far as politics, no matter who they have as a governor, Republican or Democrat. You can't get elected in New Jersey if you're not liberal enough on social issues. So Christie doesn't have a fat leg to stand on in this debate as far as conservatism, to be honest.
He's obviously got to be somebody's friend. I mean, from an electability standpoint, it's just I can't think of somebody who who just looks so unelectable but continues to win in his state.
He has that Jersey because Jersey is the inbred cousin of New York.
That's right. You kind of got the
And-
Soprano thing going on. You got like
So you really just need to meet that personality profile to get elected, whether Democrat or Republican. It's just like California, because the last Republican we elected was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was socially as liberal. I posted a picture of him sitting on a boat with a young black girl.
I seen it.
I seen it too. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where we had a chance to recall Gavin Newsom. But the leading candidate for the Republican side was Larry Elder, who is roundly clowned as a black clown. If we could have recalled Gavin Newsom, it would have been so with a candidate like Arnold Schwarzenegger that's not too extreme, but we know he's
fuck your freedom.
Yeah.
Fuck your freedom. Remember he said that? Like, and then he
and
apologized
that's
for
why
it.
the recall lost, because Gavin Newsom was actually losing the recall by 52% to 48%.
So Marcus, let me ask you this before they come back real quick. Do you remember when he was governor, there was like a famous photo that was taken of him for one of his press things. It's him smoking a cigar and like his belt buckle was like a skull and bones thing.
Yeah.
And there was like all these people talking about how it was like tied to the bushes and all this. Do you remember that whole situation?
Yeah, they wanted to make him out to be like his dad.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was like I just remember that that's something that the highlight of like him in California. I think when I think about him in California,
to show that picture of Schwarzenegger to know that he was an international player,
right?
Because the housekeeper thing, if you have seen a picture of her, you would know damn well that the dude.
Dude, he was just so jacked up on roids, man. His testosterone levels to the damn roof. He probably was like trying to get it every 5 minutes. I mean, she was just there, you know.
He had no standards. We're back here.
Yeah, we're back. Let's go. Let's wrap up question. Go on. Give some audio, Marcus.
Okay, here we go.
Right there, buddy.
Tonight should be voted off the island. Please use your marker to write your choice on the notepad in front of you.
Oh, this is interesting. They're
Starting
all
of
gonna...
the people on the stage.
Are you
Fox Business is
or Christie, right?
I mean, we're here, like, we're happy to debate, but I think that's
No, do it.
Hold on.
Don't be a punk.
Nobody wants to
He's a bitch.
I want to hear this one.
This is a punk.
He's a bitch.
I want to be clear.
Let me ask you this.
If I may.
Let me ask you
I
something.
would've still would've called out
Answer
David
that question.
and
Let me ask
Christie.
you this one.
Yeah.
What is your mathematical path,
Yes.
Governor DeSantis, in order to try to beat President Trump, who has a commanding and enduring lead in this race?
So polls don't elect presidents. Voters elect presidents.
Right.
And we're going to take the case of the people in these early states. We're going to do it in a state-by-state direction. And why? Because as Reagan said in his day, this is our time for choosing. We are not getting a mulligan on the 2024 election. Republicans have lost 3 straight elections in a row. We were supposed to have a red wave with inflation at 9%. It crashed and burned. Not in Florida, it didn't. We delivered it in Florida. And so we've got to choose right. We've got to win. And we need somebody that's going to be able to serve 2 terms. So in January of 2023, they'll be able to address the nation saying, we turned the economy around, we secured the border, and we fended off the threat from communist China. As your president, I will get that
You
job
mean January
done.
2024?
I believe I did see you write something. Governor Christie,
Write it down.
Excuse me. Governor Christie, I believe I did see you write something on the card. Who was it?
No, but I'll certainly tell you.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, I think I've been the only one on this stage who's been clear about this. I vote Donald Trump off the island right now.
Trump, yeah. He's
And the reason I vote him off the island,
but any of the people on the
because
stage
you know what?
off the-
Every person on
This
stage
fucking
has
thing
shown
is
the
rigged
respect
and
for
scripted.
Republican
This-
voters
I'm calling
to
it right
come
now,
here
man. This
to
is too
express their views
scripted.
honestly, candidly, and directly, and to take your questions honestly.
This is professional wrestling, people. This is professional
Because
wrestling.
they've done
Yeah.
it. Vivek, put your hand down for a second, would you? I still got time, dude. So chill out. Here, look. This guy has not only divided our party, he's divided families.
Nobody up
all
there is
over
going to
this
take
country.
Trump's side,
He's
probably.
divided friends all over this country. I've spoken to people, and I know everyone else has, who have sat at Thanksgiving dinner or at a birthday party and can't have a conversation anymore if they disagree with Donald Trump.
Governor
He needs to
and
be voted
candidates.
off the island, and he needs to be taken out of this process.
Can we get Vivek 15 seconds?
Right, Lucy.
All right, you have 15 seconds, Vivek.
Here we go.
I have a different view on this. I think Trump was an excellent president, but the America First agenda does not belong to one man. It does not belong to Donald Trump. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you, the people of this country. And the question is, who's going to unite this country and take the America First agenda to the next level? When we rallied
He's
behind
got
the cry
good
to make
words,
America great
but
again,
he doesn't
we did not
inspire
just
me
hunger
to think
for a
that
single
he's going to
man.
do it. You
We
see what I'm saying?
hungered for the unapologetic
He's like the
pursuit
guy
of
that did all the
excellence.
work in the
Yes,
school
I will
project, but
respect
nobody
Donald
wants
Trump
him
and
to
his legacy
present
because
it.
it's the
You know what I'm
right
saying?
thing to do. But
Like-
we
Yeah,
will
going
unite
forward,
this
kid.
country to take the America First agenda to the next level, and that will take a different generation to do it.
That does it. I I repeat, that does it for the
Really?
second
That's it.
Republican primary debate live from the Ronald Reagan.
All right, man. Yeah, I've watched. I've seen professional wrestling that was more
I
convincing
wish
than
they had
that.
held up their cards, man.
No, that was all staged, man, to be able to try to have that
I
conversation.
have to give the
happen.
Latina the last
You know,
word.
that was all.
Okay, we're out of the debate. What is?
We're out of the debate.
Let's start off with Michael. What's your synopsis of this debate right here?
So this was more of a clusterfuck than the first one, and I thought that was going to be difficult to accomplish. The reason why I say that is there was no clear winner in this debate. Nobody stood above the crowd. In fact, like I think the biggest loser is probably Vivek. I mean, I'm sitting there going, he really was the most talked about candidate after debate one, and he was super weak, I think, in this debate. I mean, so I mean, this is again, ratings suck. I think that Lucid kind of called it, and it just seems like political theater to me, man. I think that anybody that's paying attention sees that this is bullshit. Yeah, they gave him the last word. Yeah. What you think, Eric?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I don't feel like anyone gave us any answers other than those packaged responses from the political party. And Michael and Marcus both made the point that whenever there was room for a little bit of disagreement, they all yelled over each other. But whenever it was a question that they would all agree on, there was plenty of time for each one of them to answer individually.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems so scripted. I mean, again, the fact that the culture war questions were the ones that were the quietest, right, and the ones that had the best signal quality, basically, if you were going like from an audio metaphor sort of standpoint, and those were the clearest ones, so that nobody interrupted those. But anything about inflation, anything about the economy, anything about national defense, Ukraine, anything like this, you noticed it became just a devolving conversation because they don't want real talking points on that. And to answer back to your question about the hold up the card thing, the island thing, that was the soft pitch to go ahead for the Never Trump people. Everybody seemed to have their play, and that was his one. So really, even though Vivek had the last word, so to speak, the last word I think that people are going to remember is going to be Christie. They're going to remember him as the last word. Yeah.
And my issue with that is that Trump was such a punk, he wouldn't just hold his card up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's just he wanted to, I guess maybe they didn't want it to be so aggressive. I don't know. Marcus, what do you we were during the break, we kind of missed this. When we talk about this, like again, back to the CRT, situation, this issue where, you got to, Tim Scott saying that he doesn't believe the country is a racist country. And like you were going to talk about the criminal justice system. We've talked about the 13th Amendment before on this podcast. Yeah. What is the black libertarian or the black conservatarian think, secretly in their living rooms that we don't get, to hear about this issue?
I think we would have loved Doug to be more pronounced in his viewpoint in this debate, because I think all the rest of the candidates represent the status quo. I don't think they actually speak to issues that we could use to move all of us as Americans forward. And first and foremost, in my personal belief, I believe that liberty is a subject that we all need to make sure all of us have.
So again, Marcus, to cut to brass tacks on it, to just jump right to the issue. Like again, they've tried to want to kind of gloss over this sort of CRT, race conversation that's happening in public schools. You work in public school, right?
Right.
And of course, you're a black person in America. I mean, and again, on this podcast, you have mentioned multiple times that you believe that the only expressed racism in this country is in the criminal justice system. So this is a question for Marcus. Yeah. Is the only people that can really talk about that you think effectively going to be a black candidate?
I don't think so, because Tim Scott tries to ballet around this issue. He's walking on his tippy toes. And previously, he has expressed concerns about subject matters as a qualified immunity when he was trying to do that police reform bill. That's where he got stuck on qualified immunity. If the government can't be held responsible for its actions, how can we?
Is that really? Do you think
have separate classes?
So, Marcus, follow-up question: Follow-up question to that point. We've talked about this a lot. Also, here is how do we sell liberty to different groups, right? And
Right.
and again, as libertarians, we don't really like to use group identity in politics. We want to talk about individuals, but the truth is, on a political science perspective, people tend to begin to make tribalistic decisions about their voting based off what other people are going to do. Is the way to capture the black vote from a liberty perspective, is qualified immunity in the police still the fulcrum to do that with? Like,
it is one of the pillars of where to do that with. The primary pillar would be the war on drugs.
Okay.
Because the war on drugs has been proven over and over again to be prosecuted in a prejudiced fashion.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, and again, we have, they missed the point last debate about how, powdered cocaine and crack cocaine, right? The 1994
Right.
crime bill, and so it's so, coincidental that the gentleman who is instrumental in passing it, his son is, benefiting from, again, this selective prosecution, this selective criminalization, things like that. My quote on my page
or
and
the
podcast.
fact that, we were in the Reagan library and he's responsible for the war on drugs.
Oh my God, Reagan.
Just say no.
So Nixon initiated the war on drugs, and he said that this was to be a direct extension of Jim Crow laws.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Ronald
you kind of those
Reagan
hippies.
took
yeah.
that philosophy and magnified it to a national prominence, whereas the war on drugs was directly associated with minority communities. And with that being said, you cannot look at where we are today as a country without looking at where we were less than 50 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we
They say, oh yeah, slavery was 150 plus years ago. It's not relevant. Well, the war on drugs is relevant.
Well, right, then that's that 13th Amendment sort of out, right? People
Right.
don't. Yeah, people always want to talk about America ending slavery. We didn't end it. We just changed the qualifications. for it.
You changed the parameters.
You just changed who was subject to it. And so, you being from California, Marcus, you were, hip hop really, in my opinion, got its start in California. You can talk about the East Coast, West Coast thing, but as a kid that was living in Louisiana, that was non-biased about where hip hop began. And like in the early 90s or late 80s, it was West Coast stuff to me. Of course, you had Run DMC, I guess, maybe a little bit earlier than that. But, the hip hop that really got like white kids like me to listen was NWA, Ice Cube, right? Snoop Dogg, Tupac. These are the people that got, that to me is like hip hop. And that whole entire genre of music, especially from that era, was this sort of anti-police, anti-establishment sort of situation, right? And is that still the message that again needs to happen to kind of capture the black vote when it comes to liberty?
I don't think we have that luxury anymore.
Okay.
Simply because hip hop now is more pop than the revolutionary aspect it was when I
No,
came
Marcus.
up.
I don't mean the music itself. I mean the spirit of that message. That
The spirit of the message is no more revolutionary either.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. The spirit of the message is, how can I get clicks? How can I get people to listen to this music? How can I get them to make TikTok videos and IG videos with me dancing with their music or expressing something with their music? That's what it is. When I listen to Wu-Tang, when I listen to Public Enemy, when I listen to the NWA, I looked at it in the revolutionary standard that tyranny is wrong. That was the only point that I ever took from that music, that tyranny was the problem. And when I look at our fellow citizens, I always say we're all on the same line. What happens to me will eventually happen to you, no matter what race or whatever.
So sort of last question to kind of wrap it all up with that. Who do you think won or lost tonight?
I think everybody lost.
Yeah.
Because nobody stood out. Nobody stood out. It was just plain oatmeal. It was oatmeal without brown sugar. It was oatmeal without raisins, walnuts, anything that would make oatmeal better. It was
no salt.
oatmeal like you needed to eat it and go out and work on the farm in the field tonight. It was
all right. So question for Eric here, the Floridian on the show tonight. Obviously still in the polls, DeSantis is like the number 2 guy. And I'll tell you what, from being here in Arkansas, a deeply red MAGA country, the concept is number 2 is so far from number 1. Like he's just the first loser. It's like the Talladega Nights thing, like second place, first loser. Do Floridians really, I mean, because Trump's a Floridian guy too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so what is that zeitgeist like in Florida? I mean, is DeSantis just like, is like, everybody thinks he just stays governor, or do you think people really want to see him as president?
So I feel like our state is split, and if people are paying attention and you're involved in your local politics, you know who your establishment guys are and your anti-establishment guys. As much as I'm not a Trump supporter, I still feel like DeSantis is more establishment. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not pro-Trump, but I'm also not pro-DeSantis. Like, here in the state of Florida,
yeah, you're not seeing like you're not seeing DeSantis flags on the back of boats, is what I'm saying.
Not right now. Not.
Yeah.
I mean,
thanks, Steve. Yeah, and again, I misspoke about polls. Yes,
but for him for governor, and those flags existed, and everyone wanted him to beat a Democrat. But now in a primary election, it's a totally different. I'm telling you, the anti-establishment.
And kind of clarify my point. Because Steve just kind of corrected. To clarify my point, I mean like name recognition. I feel like that's kind of the again.
I think there's a riff. Is all I'm saying is
that's what you think.
You got the pro-Trump, pro-DeSantis, and they're like, no one here in Florida has heard about your dude from this South Dakota or whatever.
Right. And nobody.
You know what I mean?
And again, if you didn't watch the last debate, you didn't know him.
They're like it's either DeSantis or Trump.
Right.
And again, we're trying to be like, well, what about Vivek? So, you know, from a liberty perspective, to my Republican counterparts, like, my boy, whatever, showing up to Porcupine Fest and all that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, there's another option other than a populist, right-leaning populist and an authoritarian right-leaning Republican. That's what DeSantis and Trump are. You got a populist, right-leaning authoritarian.
I think that from a political science standpoint, what you have said about Florida is exactly what's happening in the RNC. I think the RNC is simply divided between Trump and not Trump.
Yeah.
And that the effort is either going to be him or not him. And that every one of those players, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, Chris Christie, even Vivek in some ways, DeSantis, these are all guys that are meant there to try to take that vote away and somebody else come through. Haley strikes me as the GOP equivalent of Hillary, in my opinion. Has that like kind of, she's exactly the Republican version of Hillary.
Hear me out. Like Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, and Chris Christie are the neocon vote still left in the Republican Party. And then you have a populist movement, which is Trump and Vivek, because Trump's not there, but Vivek's the same message, and he might be pandering or whatever. But what he's doing is he's stealing support from the Trump supporters that are watching these debates. That's what he's doing.
And again, I hate to say that I live in. I don't want to. I do live in an echo chamber. Again, I live in a deeply red state, and I have the honor and privilege sometime of guest hosting a conservative talk show on Fox Talk Radio. So I hear opinions from voters all the time, and it's Trump. And anybody but him is just not going to fly. Now, again, it's not like Arkansas is going to make a difference in the primaries. You're going to have, it's going to be Iowa, New Hampshire. It's the same states it always is. And so I guess that Midwestern thing might be different. We might need to find somebody in Iowa or New Hampshire.
No, I'm telling you, in Florida, the voters in the Republican Party are going to vote Trump.
Yeah.
The establishment and the media and the donors, they are going to back DeSantis.
So before we wrap this up, let's jump to general election, because it's starting to shape up to be very interesting. Okay. So we're obviously going to have a libertarian candidate. It's going to be, and we know now who kind of the pool is going to be. There may be a dark horse at the end. Lars Mapstead, Chase Oliver, Mike Tremont, Joshua Smith has thrown into it. I haven't gotten to talk to him. He kind of ghosted us, didn't he, Marcus?
Kind of a little bit, but
he's coming to Jacksonville October 21st. So
okay, tell him that we want to have him on, and then also,
Eric, that's your assignment, bro.
That's your tell him you want to have him on, and then and of course Mike, what's his name? The new Michael, what's his name?
Rectenwald.
Yeah, just kind of threw in there too. And of course, again, you have also, there's two other people, but one of those people will be a libertarian candidate. They won't have ballot access in all 50 states. And then you have also now the No Labels Party. right?
Yeah,
and
that
the forward.
That was quite impressive.
Right. And so for those at home who don't know, like for instance, in Arkansas right now, Libertarian Party of Arkansas, we're fighting for ballot access. And we have spent like a year trying to get it, like to gather the signatures and everything. They came in and did it like a week. Like they had the money and they just did it.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
it was impressive.
So I've heard through various channels that their view is they're kind of trying to help the Never Trump thing happen. That they're looking, that they either want a path to winning through the House, right? Like it's kind of a libertarian path to winning, or that they're there just to stand by and try to make sure he loses, right? So kind of, and then of course Cornel West, like you have the Democrats fearful of him as well too. I mean, I have so many people I see on Twitter that are hardcore DNC people that all they do, they never talk up a candidate. All they do is talk down a candidate, talk down Cornel West, talk down, RFK in the primary, talk down, any libertarian, whatever. They don't talk anybody up. So here's the question, an honest answer. If Trump is the nominee, does he win in an election that's bifurcated like that or trifurcated, quadrificated?
I don't think he does.
This guy, Ragnarwald, I'm not a Mises guy, but he is the right-leaning libertarian candidate from the Mises perspective, if you will. I don't understand why, if the conspiracy theory that the Mises Caucus is to take over the Libertarian Party, why they would run a candidate that would steal votes from their preferred candidate, Trump. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So.
Yeah. I've never gotten really into the caucus thing. So
I don't think Ragnarwald is popular enough.
We're going to bring that one up, Steve. Yeah.
I don't think any Republican candidate that has filed so far is popular enough to steal votes from anyone.
So what I'm saying is in a general election with any Democrat, I don't care who, and Trump is as the Republican nominee, and then you have some pretty decent, maybe possibly strong independent candidates. I think we're going to have a decent one as libertarians. And I think that, and again, the No Labels Party is probably going to have somebody that they're going to pull out of their ass. Does he win? I mean, I don't think that, I think that if Trump, I'm saying it right now. If Trump's the nominee, I don't believe he wins the general election. That's my opinion. And that's not because it's an anti-Trump thing or a pro-Trump thing. It's just a numbers thing. Is what I think happens. And again, that's if we have a fair election and there's not any crazy shit going on, which I'm sure that they wouldn't mind pulling out. Marcus, what do you think, dude, being over in California?
I just want to inject this point. When 2016 came around, Trump won Michigan by just over 10,000 votes. He won the Midwest, Wisconsin, by less than that. He won Pennsylvania by less than that. And that's what people didn't factor in 2020, that it was more so a vote against Hillary Clinton because she's so hated that they voted for Trump. And then in 2020, when the pandemic was at its prime, when he shut down the government in March 2020, that's what lost him the general election.
And again, and so any MAGA people out there listening, don't get mad at us for saying that, but that is the truth, is that Trump signed his own fate with his behaviors and his actions when it came to COVID. That's just the truth. Yeah.
And that's just pure facts. That's not my personal opinion.
Right.
That's
for me to piggyback off what Marcus said, if you look back at the 2020 election, every one of those states that Trump lost, he needed those electoral votes. And, it's Pennsylvania. I don't got them. Arizona, Nevada, Georgia.
Leave that comment up.
I think there was like a Wisconsin or Michigan or one of those where it was like questionable on election night.
Yeah.
Look up the difference that the libertarian vote made in all of those
100%.
states. Look that up. And that's where a lot of people are like, you stole our votes. It's like, well, maybe you didn't earn our votes. You know what I mean? Like Trump ran up the
I mean, that's been the argument. Anybody libertarian or liberty leaning,
you didn't do anything to earn he didn't pardon Snowden, he didn't pardon Julian Assange, he didn't pardon Ulbricht. You know what I mean? Like there were multiple things Trump could have done to win the libertarian vote, and he chose not to. So
yeah, we've talked about this before about how if you want to vote Libertarian to influence policy, because you can influence policy even if your candidate doesn't win. For instance, if you're in a state and your Libertarian congressional candidate gets 10 points, that's significant. It's so significant that the incumbent next cycle is going to be thinking the entire time he's in his cycle is, what the fuck am I going to do not to piss these people off? Because 10 points can lose me an election, right? What if it's 15 next time? People aren't scared to vote for this guy. So you can influence the behavior of your current representative by voting Libertarian. It's not a lost cause. So 3 things I want to get to. One is somebody brought up, about RFK being if he does not secure the DNC nomination, RFK being a Libertarian candidate. I threw this out there to a couple people, not because I want to see this happen, but from a perspective of marketing the party, namesake, getting out there, access to money, capital, advertising. Would the Libertarian Party be benefited by putting up like a Vivek or an RFK, whoever the biggest loser, the loser of the DNC or RNC, that they're not Libertarians? I know they're not, but we've talked about that standard is pretty difficult. Everybody can always say somebody's not a Libertarian for this or that, right? Does the Libertarian Party benefit from that, or is that something we should avoid?
Marcus, go ahead.
What do you think, dude?
Avoid.
I
don't think anybody who has run under the banner of republicanism can ever bring us to the promised land. I don't, because what is that, like 4 or 5% of the federal vote in order to get on the debate stage in a I don't think any of these current Republican candidates bring that to the table. And the reason why they're basically status quo, because if you separate
and Marcus, I know that, and the argument is that they're not Libertarians. I get it, but we have a brand. The truth is that the Libertarian Party has a branding problem. And the branding problem is for a lot of voters in America is, why would I vote for them? They're not going to win, right? That's the branding problem that the Libertarian Party or any third party has right now. So does that help get that over? I mean, does it help it? Does it help like, hey, now he's introduced me to Libertarian ideas or whatever? I mean, what I'm saying is, let me ask you this. Let's say that if you had a crystal ball and a RFK running as a Libertarian for president made it to where nobody got 270, and it had to go through the House, would you then say, yeah, let's go ahead and put him up?
RFK, I don't honestly.
Or anybody. Anybody.
Yeah,
Nikki Haley, anybody.
On his stance on firearms. But if somebody could actually put up and that's why I think Libertarians have such a grand opportunity here in 2024, because you have 2 senile children running against each other at the end of the day.
Well, and that's the Lars Mapstead thing, is like he wants to secure 1 electoral vote somewhere.
Yeah,
like he thinks that's the big thing. Send a message like,
that
"Hey,
would be huge."
It'd be huge.
Dude, I like Lars. I like what he's doing outside of that strategy, and he's also using his platform to help states with their ballot access. I don't know if you've seen, and he has funded candidate training outside of his campaign.
Yep.
And like Lars is doing like big stuff within the party, and I don't know if this is his strategy, but if I'm him, if I don't get
a lot of people wouldn't.
National, hopefully that votes before.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Yeah,
vote.
Scientific is right. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't.
He should run for chair of the Libertarian Party.
Senile children. That's funny. Okay, so that I think there was another question. Bring up Kenneth Blevins. He had a good comment too. I believe it was his comment that we had up. Not that one. Gary Johnson, 5.7 in Oklahoma, 2016, which is interesting. So in 2016, did Oklahoma still have straight party voting, or is that recently through then?
I'll be back.
All right, go ahead. I think it's his comment before that, I believe. Marcus, it was kind of a longer one.
Comment before that was screwing.
No, no.
I like his comment before that.
I made a note to try to keep it up. I wanted to address that one. If it's,
I'm going through it.
Well, Kenneth, we're trying to find the comment. It was a good one. You mean anything of substance? No, not that one. No, it's a long comment. And if it's not, maybe it was Lucid's. It could have been. I can't remember now. I said keep it up, and you clicked it off. So
Yeah.
we're gonna blame.
My
We're gonna
bad.
blame MC here.
There's a more than a few comments, and I
Oh no,
truly
it was
appreciate you all.
Kenneth. It was Kenneth was saying that he would want a well-spoken libertarian to run as a Republican just to be able to get in that debate and be able to say the things that they weren't going to say. And Kenneth, that's the reason why that won't happen. Is you know, the RNC is just not gonna. They're just not going to let that occur. You know, I mean, when it comes to fundraising, you know, these things are about donors, and you know, there's no such thing as grassroots politics, Marcus. Okay, when it comes to these big parties, it's just not. When someone says, you know, most of my donations came from small donors, they were Act Red, Act Blue. These people, these donor lists, these qualifiers, a third party ran them, contacted them, and if you're not somebody the RNC wants to at least be up there, they're not going to give you access to that. It's just not going to happen. Yeah,
I will say, fun fact, that Kenneth Blevins was the guy that I had on directly before you on the Black Powder podcast, and I will say I was struck by both of you and your passion for the movement, and it was just freaking awesome. Both of you, Kenneth, I want to say you inspired me as much as Michael inspired me, and Eric, you inspired me as well. That's why I like to put myself in between my two bearded white guys as the chocolate. As the chocolate stuffing in a reverse Oreo.
The reverse Oreo. Yeah, I knew that was that was in the analogy that came up. That was going to be it. So parting thoughts, ending thoughts, gentlemen. It's getting a little late here. I'm coming up on 10:30.
I will default to Eric. What was your parting thoughts about this debate tonight?
Crap show. A lot of partisan cookie cutter responses. No one really tackled the issues from the perspective that they could have taken advantage of and chose not to. Like, they all said the same thing and they didn't separate themselves from each other.
Yeah, he was answering. So that I agree, man. That's my kind of parting thought, is that there was nothing that really surprised me other than how mediocre it was. Like, I thought it might not be as mediocre as it was. Like, you know, there might be a couple, you know, something interesting in there. Like, it was all just like, it was all Lucky Charms. Like, I mean, no marshmallows in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there weren't even one in the whole thing, basically. RFK believes AIDS isn't primarily caused by HIV. 5G is down. You know, it's scientific. You were much more well-versed in these subjects than I am. You know, the RFK thing, the vaccine thing, the health thing, the only thing that I have ever had an opinion on is I think discourse is good. I like when people talk about things openly in public forums. Let the public decide if they're right or wrong. You know, that's kind of been my opinion about all this. What was that guy that didn't want to debate him? That they were trying to raise all the money. But anyway, yeah, I'm with you, Eric. I think it's just as bland as it could be. Marcus, final thought, final word.
I would just want to say that I was thoroughly disappointed with this debate. I thought it was a whole load of cold diarrhea soup. And there was a follow-up with a appetizer or dessert of a hot shit sandwich. So this was bullshit.
This is worse than non-seasoned chicken.
I don't know how you beat Biden when all you do. Nobody talked about new ideas. It was all bullshit.
Nothing.
So that's what. Yeah, it was nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well,
nothing burger.
Nothing burger. All right, that's the opinion. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you did, and this will be recorded. Yeah, Black Powder Podcast.
You got any sponsors you need to throw out?
Yeah,
Common Arms. And
go ahead.
Firearms Radio Network.
Yeah, Firearms Radio Network, as always, and of course, Common Arms Trade Company. Sound like it says like it sounds. Just Common Arms Trade Company. Look them up on Facebook. They got their link tree there. They got some cool guns too. I mean, they got all kind of cool stuff. But I like that guy, and follow his account too on Facebook. So with that, let's just sign off the air, Marcus. This has been great, dude. Thanks.
I want to thank you both for this opportunity to speak with you. You inspire me, and I look forward to our future endeavors. With that being said, I just want America to realize you need to live free
or die.
Basically.
Yeah. Peace.